In this very moment, Jian Qinxing felt as if the world had gone insane. It was just a moment ago that you saw a Saint 8 Dan expert attempting to barge through the formation, only to be roasted crispy on the surface and succulent on the inside, ready to be plated and served. Despite that, you still made the decision to challenge the formation trial too. Is it really worth going that far for a storage ring? Furthermore, it's not as if it isn't going to be given back to you. This is just a temporary deposit, and the same rules apply to everyone as well. There is really no need for you to cause trouble right now. We aren't even in the Zhang clan yet. You'll only die tragically at this rate. Be my guest. The third elder, Zhang Wuxian, didn't expect that the young man before him would be so insolent. He nonchalantly gestured for the young man to go ahead while standing idly on the spot. Nodding, Zhang Xian began making his way over to the formation. Zhang Shi. Jian Qinxing rushed forward to stop Zhang Xian. It's all right. I'm just giving it a try. Knowing that Jian Qinxing was worried about him, Zhang Xian assured him with a bright smile. Jian Qinxing stared at Zhang Xian for a moment, and through the determined look in the young man's eyes, he could tell that the young man had already made up his mind. Thus he could only sigh deeply and take a step back. Be careful. The formation's attack only served as a warning against those who infringed on the rules of the Zhang clan. So Zhang Xian's life wouldn't be in any danger. At most, he would only suffer some pain. Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian leaped forward and flew for the formation. Hung long long. In the instant that he stepped into the formation, a massive dragon immediately materialized. However, it wasn't a flame dragon this time around but a water dragon. The dragon formed in the formation wasn't a real dragon but a spirit. It harnessed the power of the 5 elements, thus allowing it to change its form and attribute at will. The congregation of water formed a being reminiscent of a true dragon, and as soon as it appeared, a towering wave immediately covered half of Zhang Xian's vision. At the same time, an overwhelming pressure weighed down on the surroundings, causing the earth to tremble ever so slightly non-stop. Flames could burn everything down to cinders, creating barren lands where no life could survive in. Flood was equally frightening as well. The excessive concentration of water vapor in the air left one feeling as if one's lung would burst, leaving one sputtering for oxygen. It's a water dragon. Jian Qinxing's face turned pale, and his body trembled in agitation. Over 90% of a human's body was made up of water, so those who commanded water would actually be able to cause far more damage to a human as compared to those who commanded flames. This is the punishment for your arrogance. Zhang Wuxian flung his sleeves backward and harumphed coldly. Even the renowned sword master, Jian Qinxing, whose name was sung alongside that of their clan head, had chosen to obediently hand over his storage ring. And yet, this fellow just had to choose the difficult way out of this. It was as if he was asking to be walloped. Knowing that the formation would surely teach the arrogant young man a lesson, Zhang Wuxian couldn't be bothered to look on any longer, so he turned to Jian Qinxing and asked, Sword Saint Jian Qinxing, is he your student? He is my senior, Jian Qinxing replied awkwardly. On the journey here, he had spent much time conversing with the young man on the subject of swordsmanship, and he had benefited greatly from the young man's deep insight. Despite the difference in their age, the young man could already be considered as half a teacher to him. He dared not even contemplate the possibility of the young man being his student, let alone say something as ridiculous as that out loud. This was also the reason why he changed his mind eventually, deciding to have Zhang Xian appear, before others, as his senior instead. Senior? Zhang Wuxian's eyebrows shot up in amazement. That young man is your senior? Seniority in the lineage usually came with the connotation of being more powerful and skilled. Just what qualifications could that young man possibly have to be considered as Jian Qinxing's senior? Third elder, I'll have to ask you not to look down on him. My senior might be still young and weak, but with sufficient time, he'll surely astound the entire continent. Noticing Zhang Wuxian's doubt, Jian Qinxing shook his head and said, Astound? Zhang Wuxian couldn't help but sneer. To challenge the formation when he knows that he doesn't stand a chance at all, is that how he astounds others? Even a Saint 8 Dan pinnacle expert was left on the verge of death from the powerful assault of the formation. And yet, A mere Grand Dominion realm cultivator, like him, still insisted on challenging it. No matter how one looked at the matter, it was pretty obvious that the fellow had a screw loose in his head. Astound, more like aghast. Is the third elder doubting my words? Noticing the disdainful look on Zhang Wuchen's face, Jian Qinxing frowned in displeasure. Of course Zhang Wuchen harumphed coldly, just as he was about to remark that Jian Qinxing's judgment had been clouded by his age. He suddenly stiffened up on the spot. His eyes were fixated at the sight in front of him, and his pupils dilated into large circles. The words he had been wanting to say choked his throat, leaving him feeling so suffocated that he could die of asphyxiation. What's wrong? Noticing that there was something wrong with Zhang Wuchen's expression, Jian Qinxing traced his gaze and looked over as well, and in the next instant, his body also stiffened. In the formation, not only did the massive water dragon not assault the young man who dared to challenge the formation, it was even rubbing its huge head against the young man's robe, as if an adorable pet. On the other hand, the young man snapped his finger, and a wooden stick that he had conjured out of nowhere suddenly flew outward. The water dragon immediately turned around and dashed out to catch the wooden stick between its teeth, before dashing back to pass it into Zhang Xian's hands. Then it stuck out its tongue playfully, as if a dog fawning upon its owner. But with a displeased expression, Zhang Xian shook his head in disapproval and tossed out the wooden stick once more. Too slow, faster. So, the water dragon burst forth once more, and this time, before the wooden stick could even fall on the ground, it had already caught it in between its teeth and flew back to Zhang Xian. This is more like it. Zhang Xian finally gave it a nod of approval. All right, retract the formation. I want to enter. Roar. The water dragon hurriedly nodded, and it raised its talon and swiped it down forcefully. In the next instant, a surge of flowing water appeared beneath Zhang Xian's feet, and it extended along with his footsteps like a bridge. Junior, we can go in now. Noting the new identity he had adopted, Zhang Xian beckoned for Jian Qinxing to enter as well before placing his hands behind his back and walking forward leisurely. You, not expecting the formation spirit to fawn on him, as if a lapdog. Zhang Wuchen's face turned incredibly livid. He hurriedly flew toward the formation while exclaiming in a fluster. Wait a moment. Noisy. Zhang Xian waved his hand in displeasure. Kacha. In the next moment, Zhang Wuchen saw the massive water dragon diving straight toward him with alarming speed. Completely caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, Zhang Wuchen didn't even manage to react before he was struck head-on and smacked right down onto the ground. Watching as Zhang Wuchen convulsed helplessly on the ground, Jian Qinxing felt a hoarse sensation at the back of his throat. With rather stiff movements, he walked into the formation in a daze and followed behind Zhang Xian, as if a puppet under control. Back in the Sanctum of Sages, he had heard several rumors that the young man was a rare prodigy in formations as well, and from the looks of it now, the rumors were definitely no exaggeration. To think that the young man would be able to tame the Dracatiger formation, which the old ancestor of the Zhang clan had set up personally in the blink of an eye, just how many more insane abilities did he have up his sleeves? Third Elder. The other elders in the surroundings saw the earlier happenings as well, and they hurriedly rushed over to pluck Zhang Wuchen out of the ground. That fellow actually tamed the formation spirit. How in the world did he manage to do that? Straightening his back, Zhang Wuchen gazed at the young man who was leisurely making his way through the formation, and his teeth couldn't help but clatter in disbelief. The Dracatiger formation was formidable, but there were still cultivators in the world who would be able to pass through the formation easily even if they didn't hand over their storage ring. One such person was the Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, Yang Shi. Each time he came here, it was as if the formation couldn't register his presence at all, allowing him to pass through it without any obstruction. There were also those who were able to barge right through it through sheer force. The head of the Yuan clan boasted a defense so powerful that he was impervious to the attacks of the formation spirits, allowing him to walk right through the formation unharmed. But never had anyone managed to tame the formation spirit into a loyal lapdog, and even play fetch with it, this was really challenging the boundaries of his rational mind. However, there was one thing that the young man had overlooked. The formation spirit of the dual spirit heaven dominating formation was constantly changing. Just because the young man had managed to tame a single spirit didn't mean that he had gained absolute control over the entire formation yet. Even if he has managed to win over the dragon spirit, there's still the tiger spirit ahead. Zhang Wuchen muttered beneath his breath, and as if responding to his words, a ferocious tiger suddenly materialized in the air. Raging inferno wrapped around its body, granting it a presence reminiscent of a qilin. It was the other spirit of the dual spirit heaven dominating formation, tiger spirit. It was formidable that the young man had managed to tame the dragon spirit, but the tiger spirit was the stronger of the two, and it was known for not conforming to authority as well. Zhang Wuchen was deeply interested to see just what the young man would do in the face of such a situation. Roar! The moment the tiger spirit materialized in the air, it immediately let loose a ferocious howl and tore its claws down upon Zhang Xian. The overwhelming strength behind the tiger spirit's attack caused the structure of the surrounding space to collapse, and as if a calamitous tornado, a ferocious surge of might crushed right down on Zhang Xian. In the face of this surge of might, a hint of trepidation surfaced in the eyes of the water dragon as it trembled on the spot, not daring to take a single step forward. The two spirits in the dual spirit heaven dominating formation weren't of equal standing and strength. There was a clear hierarchy between the tiger spirit and dragon spirit. Just as Zhang Wuchen thought that the young man would be subdued by the tiger spirit, the young man suddenly took a single step forward and tapped his feet lightly on the ground. Boom! Amidst a deafening rumble, and the entire formation began shaking nonstop. At the same time, the tiger spirit hurriedly retracted its attack, and it began trembling in fear. The dual spirit heaven dominating formation shrouded many towering and majestic buildings, and the instability of the formation caused the buildings below to shake intensely as well, seemingly ready to be collapsed into rubble at any moment. No! The many millenniums of heritage of the Zhang clan. Zhang Wuchen's eyes widened in horror. Tens of thousands of years of prosperity had allowed the Zhang clan to grow to a scale that was even larger than that of the capitals of conferred empires. Even though the dual spirit heaven dominating formation had been constructed against the mountain and covered a vast area, it only guarded the entrance to the city. Nevertheless, the prowess of the formation was not to be underestimated. It was only under its protection that the Zhang clan was able to remain standing for so many years, overcoming multiple crises without anyone successfully shaking its core. Thus, everyone thought that as long as the formation erected by the old ancestor stood, the city would be unshakable. Yet, who could have known that a mere Grand Dominion Realm Pinnacle Fellow would actually be able to render it on the verge of collapsing with just a stomp of his feet? Stop it! Zhang Wuchen yelled in agitation. However, it was already too late. With one last violent tremble, the formation finally reached its very limit and burst apart, bringing down innumerable buildings along with it. A cloud of dust swept across the area, and countless shadows flitted out from the many buildings in a hurry, staring dumbfounded at the devastation before them, completely oblivious to what was happening. Pada! Zhang Wuchen suddenly felt strength receding from his entire body, and he collapsed weakly to the ground. In this moment, he finally understood why the young man asked if he was able to speak on the behalf of the Zhang clan. It seemed like he had known that this would happen right from the start. The collapse of their defense formation, and the destruction of innumerable buildings. Even if he was the third elder of the Zhang clan, this was not something that he could take responsibility for. It would be no joke to say that this was a tight slap to the Zhang clan's face, an irredeemable botch on its reputation. At the same time, Jian Qinsheng could not help but flinch at the destruction before him as well. It was true that he hated the Xing Sword Saint for stealing the person he loved, and he desired nothing more than to embarrass the Zhang clan. However, to destroy the other party's defense formation, before even officially entering the city, and even bring about the collapse of so many buildings, raising such a huge commotion, even he was unable to avoid feeling frightened jitters in his heart. He could not help but wonder if it was really the right choice for him to have invited the young man along. Zhang Xian was also a little startled by the happenings before him, but unlike the rest of the crowd, he quickly nodded in realization. He had never seen any grade 9 formations in action before, so he did not have a clear gauge of their strength. He had not thought that the collapse of the formation would actually bring about such a powerful explosion. But so what? What was done was done. In the first place, his goal was to wreak havoc in the Zhang clan. And since the so-called third elder had said that the Zhang clan would not take any responsibility for whatever happened in the formation, there was no reason for him not to pull his punches. He should just let himself loose. If he could not force the so-called young prodigy out to face him, he would not be called Zhang Xian. Third elder, what's happened? A powerful gust of wind blew over, and following which, a figure suddenly appeared right before the scene of devastation. His face twitched upon seeing the extent of the destruction before him, and he hurriedly turned to question Zhang Wuchen. First elder, I was collecting the storage rings here when a person who is supposedly the senior of the Sanctum of Sages Jian Qinsheng suddenly insisted on challenging the formation trial. And the next thing I knew, this had already happened. Zhang Wuchen swiftly went through the events that had just occurred. This was caused by someone who challenged the formation trial. The first elder was also visibly stunned by the matter. He quickly turned his sights over to Zhang Xian, only to see the young man looking back at him with a nonchalant expression. There was not the slightest hint of nervousness or fear that would usually be on the face of one who had done wrong. A frown emerged on his forehead as he asked, "May I know who you are?" "I am Zhang Xian, Jian Qinsheng Sr. I came to the Zhang clan this time around to test the Zhang clan's famed swordsmanship," Zhang Xian replied calmly. Zhang Xian. The first elder muttered the name beneath his breath before waving his hand lightly. He turned to another elder and said, "Wu Zhen, bring Zhang Xian and Sword Saint Jian Qinsheng to our guest rooms to rest." "What? But first elder?" Hearing the first elder instructing Zhang Wuzhen to bring the culprit behind the destruction to their guest rooms, completely paying no heed to the collapsed formation and buildings, Zhang Wuchen could not help but panic. Enough. Since our esteemed guest has cleared the formation trial in accordance to the rules, regardless of the outcome, we'll have to accept it, the first elder lectured. The first elder had an impassive expression on his face that made it extremely difficult to read his mood, so it was hard to figure out whether he had truly chosen to let this matter go, or was simply suppressing his rage. Zhang Wuchen clenched his fists tightly for a moment, before eventually relenting with a nod. Yes. As indignant as he felt, there was nothing he could do either. In the Zhang clan, the word of the first elder was the law. No one would dare to question his command. On top of that, the clan head had needed to leave a while ago on urgent business, so the one who truly called the shots in the Zhang clan at the moment was the first elder. First elder, it'll take us several months in order to reconstruct the destroyed formation. One of the elders could not help but ask. In the meantime, what do we do about the storage rings of the guests? The formation was used in order to determine whether the guests had brought any spatial artifacts along with them. Now that it had been destroyed, it would be hard for them to check the guests who arrive subsequently. What should they do? All those who have traveled far and wide to come to the Zhang clan are our esteemed guests. The collection of the storage ring is more of a formality from our old ancestor, rather than a safety concern. And all this while, I have thought that it was rather inappropriate to treat our guests so rudely. Because it has been part of our tradition for so many years, I didn't want to abruptly bring up this matter and cause contention within the clan. However, since our young friend over here has helped us destroy it, this could be a blessing in disguise. There's no need to rebuild the formation. Please return the storage rings that all of you have collected so far to the guests, the first elder said with a smile. Return the storage rings? But, not expecting the first elder to make such a call, the elder's face warped in horror. Considering how many outsiders there were visiting the Zhang clan, would they not be in deep trouble if even one of them bore malicious intentions toward them? There's no need to worry. Since our Zhang clan is famed as the #1 sage clan in the Master Teacher continent, I believe that no one will overstep their boundaries here either. The first elder flung his sleeves majestically, revealing deep confidence and pride. Yes, I understand. Feeling the powerful aura that the first elder was emanating, the elder hesitated for a moment before eventually nodding. As expected of the first elder of the Zhang clan, he does have the magnanimity of a large clan. Zhang Xian nodded. He had thought that he would be criticized for his actions, but it seemed like the other party had no intentions of doing so. Not only that, he even made use of this opportunity to implement such a change. Through doing so, not only would he be able to preserve the reputation of the Zhang clan as the #1 sage clan on the master-teacher continent, at the same time, the world would also be awed by his magnanimity. This was truly two birds in a stone. On top of that, it would also reinforce the strong image of the Zhang clan, thus instilling deference in others. It seems like the Zhang clan isn't all that bad. The young prodigy of the Zhang clan could learn a thing or two from his elders, Zhang Xian remarked internally. The young prodigy of the Zhang clan was engaged to Luo Ruoxin, but not once had he appeared before Luo Ruoxin, or done anything for her at all. This had reinforced the reprehensible image of the young prodigy in Zhang Xian's mind, which also led him to feel that the Zhang clan was a den of despicable individuals. After all, they allowed the young prodigy to act as he pleased, showing completely no regard for others at all. However, after seeing how the first elder dealt with the situation, he suddenly felt that his perception might have been mistaken. Perhaps, the Zhang clan was not completely irredeemable. Maybe, the young prodigy was just an exception. The elder whom the first elder had instructed earlier, Zhang Wuzhen, walked up to Zhang Xian and Jian Qinxing and said, "This way please." Seventh elder, Zhang Wuzhen. "Thank you." Nodding, Jian Qinxing quickly followed behind the other party, and Zhang Xian followed suit. After the three of them left, Zhang Wuchen walked over to the first elder and asked doubtfully, "The formation is a symbol of the Zhang clan's many years of history. Are you really going to let it go, just like that? What else are you going to do? Are you going to teach him a lesson?" The first elder shot a glance over. Zhang Wuchen's face flushed crimson upon hearing those words. As a clan of master teachers, our Zhang clan must pay careful attention to rules and propriety. If we don't even follow our own rules, how can we expect others to follow them? Since Zhang Xian was able to overcome our formation with his own ability, we have no choice but to let it go. No, not only should we let it go, I also want you to make this matter known to every single member of our Zhang clan, so that they can learn from it, the first elder said. Make this matter known to every member of our Zhang clan? Zhang Wuchen was taken aback for a moment before his eyes narrowed in realization. You mean to incite our clan members? As the entrance formation to the Zhang clan, the dual spirit heaven dominating formation, could be said to be a symbol of the Zhang clan's dignity. If it was made known that it had been destroyed by a 20-year-old lad, the other clan members would surely be trembling with rage. Hearing those words, the first elder chuckled softly as he remarked with a deep look in his eyes. The Zhang clan has been in a high position for far too long. It's about time to stir the pot a little so as to get them riled up. Only when every single individual of the Zhang clan is powerful can the Zhang clan truly prosper and incite fear in others. In comparison to that, the destruction of the formation is nothing at all. I understand. Realizing the first elder's intentions, Zhang Wuchen nodded in awe. As expected of the first elder, every single move that he made was profound and meaningful, bringing the greatest benefit to the Zhang clan. The seeming infallibility of the defense formation had left the members of the Zhang clan feeling so safe that they were beginning to lose their wariness. However, this was only a false sense of security, and this could pose a great danger to the Zhang clan. If enemies were to assault the Zhang clan, they would surely strive to swiftly uncover and exploit the flaws in the defense formation like Zhang Xian did. It would have been sheer foolishness if the members of the Zhang clan were to stand idly and leave their fates up to the resilience of the defense formation. On the contrary, without the formation, the members would be forced to constantly keep their guard up, ready for a battle at any time. It was exactly such an environment that would place the Zhang clan in a much safer position. In a sense, this was similar to learning how to swim. If one relied on swimming floats all the time, there was no guarantee that they would be there when one truly needed them. It was only by taking away the floats that would one be able to truly learn to swim. If the Zhang clan hoped to retain its position as the #1 sage clan in the master-teacher continent, it would do much better investing in its talents than its defense formations and whatnot. In crucial situations, it was always the people who made the difference. Go and have it done. Seeing that Zhang Wuchen understood what he was getting at, the first elder also chose not to explain any further. He was silent for a brief moment before adding, "Also, I want you to look into Zhang Xian's background." "Yes, first elder." Zhang Wuchen nodded before turning around and leaving. Not too long later, he returned with a jade token in hand. As the #1 sage clan in the master-teacher continent, their intelligence network was not to be underestimated. It was a walk in the park for them to uncover Zhang Xian's profile, which was well detailed in the master-teacher pavilion's records. A new student of the Sanctum of Sages this year, and he successfully cleared the Tower of Master Teachers within 15 minutes. On top of that, he pummeled Zhang Chun and Zhang Feng, and his brothers with Luo Xianqing. Wherever he steps, destruction follows. Reading the details on the records, the first elder's lower jaw nearly fell to the ground. Even the most talented genius of their Zhang clan was incapable of such a fate. So how did the young man manage to pull it off? Yang Shi's student. Yang Shi has been in our Zhang clan for more than half a year now. So when did he take in this student of his? The first elder frowned in thought. Even though Yang Shi's whereabouts remained a huge mystery to the world, as the first elder of the Zhang clan, he was still privy to some inside information. Yang Shi had been in seclusion in their Zhang clan for half a year, and he had not left since then. Just when did the other party take in such a formidable student, whose talent outshone even that of the geniuses of the Zhang clan? Yang Shi does have a student, and if I'm not mistaken, his name should be Feng Zi, Zhang Wuchen said. I know of Feng Zi, I have met him once. He's indeed quite a talented young lad. But even so, his aptitude is only slightly above that of Zhang Chun and the others. If Yang Shi truly had such a talented disciple, why haven't I heard of him before? The first elder was deeply perplexed. Yang Xian had close relations with their Zhang clan, and if he truly had such a talented disciple, there was no reason the Zhang clan would be completely unaware of it. Possessing unparalleled talent and having the surname of Zhang, could he possibly be? Suddenly recalling a matter, an excited glint flashed through Zhang Wuchen's eyes. Impossible. The first elder interjected affirmatively. I saw his soul lantern extinguishing with my own eyes a year ago. There's no way he could still be alive. But the clan head and Sword Saint Meng have been reluctant to believe that news, and they are still searching for him even now. In fact, isn't the reason they left in such a hurry earlier because they obtained some news concerning him? Zhang Wuchen said hesitantly. Even if they aren't able to divine the future, experts of their level still possess intuition, far beyond that of ordinary cultivators. They are able to sense things just by their gut feeling, and given how certain they are that he isn't dead, there might be a good chance that he's really alive. Hearing those words, the first elder pondered for a moment before replying. The bond of blood is an inexplicable relationship. It is true that cultivators of their caliber are able to perceive the status of those who are closely related to them. But I was the one who was monitoring his soul lantern, and there's no doubt that it has extinguished. Considering that he was just an ordinary mortal, there's just no way he could have survived. At which point, the first elder released a deep sigh filled with lamentation, and he stared at the sky above deep in thought. A moment later he muttered quietly, I guess there's no harm trying. Turning his gaze back to Zhang Wuchen, he continued. Check where Zhang Xian is from, and whether he has any family members or not. Understood. Zhang Wuchen clasped his fists politely before leaving. This time he was gone for a while longer. It took roughly 4 hours before he finally returned. Reporting to the first elder, Zhang Shi comes from a remote kingdom in the Qingyuan Empire, where not a single master teacher exists. Furthermore, according to the records of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. It appears that he's an orphan without any kin, and he happens to be 20 this year. Remote kingdom? Ancient domains? Could it be? The first elder widened his eyes in astonishment, not daring to believe what he had just heard. But that shouldn't be possible. He shook his head vehemently as he paced around the room. A moment later, he suddenly turned his gaze toward Zhang Wuchen and instructed, "Wuchen, I want you to find a way to get Zhang Xian into the blood reservoir, and see if there's any resonance." The blood reservoir is a place where the offspring of the Zhang clan are able to awaken their bloodline. But you should also know the circumstances surrounding that person. Even if he isn't dead, it's impossible for any resonance to occur between him and the blood reservoir, Zhang Wuchen said in incomprehension. "I know that, but he's not a person whom we can gauge by normal standards. He's the most talented person our clan has seen in the past several dozen millenniums. His very presence in the blood reservoir should be able to trigger some kind of phenomenon. As long as there's the slightest reaction, we should be able to confirm his identity," the first elder replied. "I see. Consider it done." Zhang Wuchen nodded. "Make sure to conduct this in utmost secrecy. Don't let anyone learn of it. And this is including Zhang Xian. Observe him from the shadows, and report any movements he makes to me," the first elder said. Zhang Wuchen nodded once more before taking his leave. The first elder watched intently as Zhang Wuchen's figure disappeared into the distance. An unreadable light flickered in the first elder's eyes as he seemed to muse over something of vast importance. And a moment later, he began making his way toward the depths of the Zhang clan. Not too long later, he arrived before a door. It was an average-sized round door, and it was seamlessly shut with the rest of the chamber. From the outside, it would appear that there was nothing extraordinary about this chamber. But when one tried to extend one's spiritual perception in, one would realize that it was completely impossible to perceive what was inside. It was as if the interior of the chamber was completely isolated from the rest of the world. The first elder paced outside the stone chamber for a while. He considered knocking on the door, but eventually, he held himself back. According to what Yang Shi said, he should be coming out in a few days' time. It would be unwise to interrupt him at this crucial moment. If something were to go wrong with his cultivation, not even I would be able to bear the consequences, the first elder thought as he retracted his hand, shaking his head quietly. Yang Shi was currently in seclusion within the stone chamber before him. The first elder intended to come over to see if Yang Shi was out of his seclusion, so that he could inquire about Zhang Xian's background. But seeing that the doors were still tightly shut, he eventually gave up on the idea. Yang Shi's seclusion this time around was simply too important, such that even despite the first elder of the Zhang clan, he did not dare interrupt the other party abruptly. Otherwise, if the other party's efforts ended in failure due to him, he would become a sinner of mankind. However, it was fortunate that Yang Shi had said before that his seclusion would only last half a year at most, so the other party should be coming out very soon. With such thoughts in mind, the first elder turned around and slowly walked out. Meanwhile, after receiving the orders from the first elder, Zhang Wuchen immediately headed for the guest rooms. After that speculation surfaced in his mind, he could not help but wonder about the capabilities that Zhang Xian wielded. Flitting swiftly ahead, before he reached his destination, he encountered the flustered seventh elder anxiously heading his way. As soon as the latter noticed him, the latter exclaimed in desperation, "Third elder, a disaster has happened." Zhang Wuchen's heart skipped a beat as an ominous sensation loomed above his heart. What happened? I don't know how to explain this situation to you. Third elder, follow me. You'll know once you see it for yourself. Elder Wuzhen struggled internally to find a way to describe what he had just seen, and eventually, he chose to simply bring the other party to the disaster instead. Swiftly dashing forward, the two of them soon arrived at the guest rooms. As the #1 sage clan of the Master-Teacher continent, the Zhang clan would welcome many challengers and visitors alike every year into their city. The so-called guest rooms were actually an entire district covering a huge area, allowing them to accommodate many guests concurrently. Right after arriving in the square just outside the guest rooms, Zhang Wuchen could not help but notice something that was simply too visibly different from before. He halted in his footsteps and pointed in a certain direction. Where did the sculptures go? What should have been erected in the square was a row of sculptures of the notable ancestors of the Zhang clan. Every single one of them had achieved incredible feats in their lifetime, making great contributions to mankind. As such, sculptures had been created of them, so that generation after generation of the Zhang clan's offspring would honor their deeds. The reason the sculptures had been placed in the square near the guest rooms was to show off the massive contributions that the Zhang clan had made to mankind, and that they had played a huge role in ensuring the continued peace of the Master-Teacher Pavilion throughout the many years. Strength was not the only reason the Zhang clan had been able to rise to become the #1 sage clan. More importantly, it was their willingness to charge into the depths of danger and sacrifice themselves for the sake of mankind that had enabled them to rise to their current standing. The deference that the guests had toward the Zhang clan was not just due to their strength, it was due to their accomplishments and contributions too. And yet, all of the sculptures that represented that had actually vanished without a trace, leaving behind a massive hole in the ground. What in the world had happened? This is the very matter that I wanted to tell you. With a face that was twisted like a bitter gourd, Elder Wuzhen looked as if there were a million words that he wanted to say, but did not know where to start. After a long moment of contemplation, he eventually gestured forward and said, "Forget it. I think you should just take a look for yourself." Seeing Elder Wuzhen's reaction, Zhang Wuchen felt even more perplexed. He quickly walked forward, and a short distance away from the square, he heard a hoarse and rather rigid voice. This voice did not sound as if it had come from a human. Rather, it seemed like it was produced by some kind of mechanical system, and it felt extremely unnatural. Books and plays sway the heart, settle on the road that paves straight ahead. Kindness and evil come in circles. Alas, the path to virtue remains tough indeed. The hoarse voice continued. I am Zhang Lingran, the 157th generation of offspring of the Zhang clan. I lived in the era more than 20,000 years ago, and my greatest achievement was charging into the subterranean gallery alone to slay 3 otherworldly demon emperors, thus foiling their plan to invade the Master-Teacher continent. I have also slain 4 Saint Nine Dan beasts with a single slash of my sword, and fought with the malevolent eminence for 7 days straight before eventually defeating him. Since everyone is interested to hear, why don't I share those incidents in greater detail with you? Zhang Lingran? Ancestor Lingran? Hearing that voice, Zhang Wuchen's lips immediately twitched in astonishment. He quickly walked over, and at the bend, he saw a bunch of guests surrounding a sculpture. As if someone had breathed life into it, the sculpture began sharing the various ups and downs in his life, and his lively expression had the crowd around him completely captivated. From time to time, thunderous applause would echo from them. Zhang Wuchen's eyebrows leaped around the place, and he nearly fell to the ground. The reason there was a plaque placed next to each of the sculptures was to inform the onlookers of the outstanding contributions that they had made in their lifetime. But to think that they would actually come to life and recite those contributions themselves. Suppressing the urge to go on a frenzy, Zhang Wuchen stared intently at the sculpture of Ancestor Lingran. The latter's hands and legs were flying around the place, gesturing desperately like a storyteller, as if he was afraid that the crowd would not be able to understand his descriptions. Unfortunately, this also meant that the lofty aura he had assumed just a moment ago had vanished without a trace. I am Zhang Xiaosua, the 212th generation of offspring of the Zhang clan. I was once the deputy clan head of the Zhang clan, and the battle techniques I have created have spread far and wide across the Master-Teacher continent, practiced by countless cultivators even to this day. I am Zhang Mafeng, the 225th generation of offspring of the Zhang clan. I left many astounding records in the sanctum of Sa. Hey, don't run away. You'd better stop right now and listen to my story, or else I'm going to beat you up. Moving ahead, Zhang Wuchen saw 2 more sculptures. One of them was explaining his affairs to the audience around him, just as Ancestor Lingran was doing. whereas the other one was chasing a guest furiously, just a short step away from tearing the other party's ears to force him to listen to him. What the heck is going on? Zhang Wuchen scratched his head in complete bewilderment. Proceeding ahead, he saw one of the ancestral sculptures sitting on one of the guests, reciting his story with a ferocious look on his face. Unable to stand it any longer, he turned around and demanded an explanation from Elder Wuxian. These ancestral sculptures were physical representations of the outstanding accomplishments and contributions achieved by the Zhang clan over the years, and they formed the basis of the Zhang clan's prestige and reputation. It was one thing for them to come to life, but to be bragging about their own accomplishments. Not to mention, they were even pummeling those who were unwilling to listen to their story. Earlier, I brought Zhang Shi here to introduce the various glorious accomplishments achieved by our ancestors, Elder Wuxian said with a pale face. Perhaps out of astonishment, he was stuttering a little. Then this just somehow happened. How could this just happen somehow? Zhang Wuchen bellowed furiously. I want you to recount everything that happened earlier to me thoroughly. Don't even leave the slightest detail out. Why yes. After I introduced him to the sculptures, I suddenly recalled some matters and lamented at how our heritage is slowly fading away. None of those of the younger generation are interested in learning about the affairs of the ancestors, and they have barely any respect or admiration for them. Elder Wuxian explained slowly. Those of the younger generation were much more impetuous than their predecessors. He had brought many guests to visit the sculptures, but very few of them would choose to stop by the sculptures and patiently read the various accomplishments achieved by the Zhang clan's ancestors. Most of them felt that there was no purpose in listening to the deeds of the dead. This had left Elder Wuxian deeply displeased for a very long period of time, which eventually led to him complaining about the matter to Zhang Xian. After saying those words, Zhang Shi said that he had a way to reverse such a situation, so he began touching each of the sculptures in order to enchant them, Elder Wuxian said with a deeply stifled face. Looking back, it seemed like he was the trigger behind this incident. If not for his lamentation, the other party would not have made such a move. It truly was a calamity. After those sculptures were enchanted, they had begun stopping the guests to explain their deeds to them. And what was worse was that the guests were forced to listen. The entire area had descended into chaos. Zhang Wuchen nearly spurted blood. The sculptures had been left here in order to let the guests know of the various accomplishments and sacrifices that the Zhang clan had made for mankind. But for them to be pulling the ears of others and reciting their tales gleefully, how is that different from boasting? Wait a moment. There should be quite a number of sculptures in the square, right? Do you mean to tell me that he enchanted all of them in a single breath? Zhang Wuchen suddenly realized that, and his eyes widened in disbelief. There had to be at least 100 predecessors who had their sculptures, names, and accomplishments left in the square. So it would have been impossible for even a 9-star spirit awakener to enchant all of them. Yet, it seemed like he had succeeded in enchanting all of them. To make things even more exaggerated, every single one of them was actually capable of independent thought. Indeed, and that's not all. Elder Wuxian suddenly recalled a certain matter, and a shudder ran through his body. That's not all. Zhang Wuchen felt as if his mind was going to explode from the sheer scale of trouble this was. He quickly followed behind Elder Wuxian to a certain area, and the latter suddenly stopped and gestured in front. Regarding that, it's right ahead. I simply don't dare to comment too lightly on this matter, so you should take a look for yourself. With eyes filled with doubt, Zhang Wuchen walked forward, and shortly after passing by a bend, before he could even scan his surroundings, a deep and heavy voice suddenly sounded in the air. Greetings, I am Kong Shi. Pudong. Zhang Wuchen fell onto the floor. As a clan of master teachers, on top of their ancestors, it was natural that they would also pay respects to Kong Shi as well. Earlier, Zhang Wuchen had been so shocked to see all of the sculptures coming to life that he had not even contemplated this possibility. Or rather, such a thing was simply too ridiculous for him to believe to be true. So, the sheer horror he felt upon hearing that voice nearly jolted his primordial spirit into dissipation. He anxiously turned his head, and his heart nearly stopped. He saw Kong Shi's sculpture standing before a group of guests, introducing himself warm-heartedly. Zhang Wuchen felt hoarseness at the back of his throat, and he widened his eyes in shock as he asked, "He enchanted Kong Shi's sculpture as well?" In this very instant, he saw the entire world spinning around him. That was Kong Shi, the man whom no human on the Master-Teacher Pavilion did not respect. Even if it was just a sculpture of him, no one would even dream of desecrating it in the slightest. And yet to actually enchant it, it's not just Kong Shi. Elder Wuzhen said as he pointed in another direction. Zhang Wuchen quickly turned his head over and saw the founding father of the Zhang clan seated on the ground, lecturing a group of guests. The founding father clearly grew more and more passionate as he spoke, to the point where there was absolutely no doubt that saliva would have splattered out of his mouth, had he possessed any in the first place. Ridiculous! This is completely ridiculous! Zhang Wuchen bellowed in frenzy. The reason the sculptures were erected in the square was to display the Zhang clan's strength and contributions to the rest of the world. While the sculptures were indeed speaking of true incidents, still, this was simply too embarrassing. This was not just a showcase anymore, but cheap bragging. And most importantly of all, why in the world did that fellow enchant Kong Shi's sculpture too? Was there a single person in the Master-Teacher continent who did not know of Kong Shi's existence? Was there any need to introduce him at all? The predecessors of the Zhang clan were awe-inspiring figures who induced respect in those standing before them. But in that very moment, with them reciting their accomplishments blatantly in such a manner, they seemed more like proud kids showing off their accomplishments. Where was the honor in this? What would become of their reputation? Destroying the formation as soon as he arrived, and playing with the ancestral sculptures in the guest area, and making them out to be fools. That fellow is clearly here to wreak havoc. Zhang Wuchen was so angry that he was on the verge of exploding. While most guests were there to challenge the Zhang clan, the deference in their eyes was clear. It was almost if they were entering the royal palace to meet the emperor. This was because, regardless of whether they were able to triumph over the offspring of the Zhang clan or not, there was still no denying the strength and influence that they wielded in the Master-Teacher continent. Yet, not only was that fellow devoid of the slightest respect for the Zhang clan, he even brought mayhem over, causing the situation to spiral out of control. That darn B*****. There's no way he could be that person. There's just no way that he could be. Zhang Wuchen shook his head relentlessly. Those of the Zhang clan had always been upright and honorable individuals. So how could that person possibly pull off something like that? Therefore, there was just no way on earth that he could be that person. And as long as he was not that person, he would be able to teach the other party a lesson, carving deep in his mind that the Zhang clan was not to be humiliated by anyone. Get the spirit awakeners of our clan over, and have them destroy the spirits in the sculptures. After some time, Zhang Wuchen finally calmed down, and he swiftly issued a set of instruction to resolve the situation. Naturally, since it was possible to enchant spirits into objects and artifacts, it was possible to destroy the spirits as well. However, it would be best to have spirit awakeners do the job, or else there was a good chance that they could accidentally damage the sculpture. Elder Wuzhen hurriedly nodded before relaying the instruction to another member of the Zhang clan. Soon, 2 elders rushed over to the scene in a hurry. 3rd elder, 7th elder. The 2 elders greeted. Elder Wu and Elder Mo will be troubling you on this matter. Zhang Wuchen clasped his fist. The reason the geniuses of the Zhang clan were skilled in most of the major occupations was because they had recruited plenty of experts from each of those occupations. Both Elder Wu and Elder Mo were 9-star Spirit Awakeners, and they were famed figures even in the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters. Don't worry, 3rd elder. This is no major issue. Elder Wu chuckled as he stroked his beard leisurely, emanating an air of confidence. I'll have the spirits in the sculptures destroyed right now, and have the sculptures returned to where they should be. The 3rd elder nodded. Even though he was extremely assured by the prowess of the 2 elders, he still felt that he should oversee the situation by the side. After all, these sculptures had been passed down through the generations by the predecessors. There was simply no replacement for them. Let's deal with this one first. Elder Wu took a look around the place before walking over to Zhang Lingren's sculpture. His primordial spirit dove out of his glabella and dived into the sculpture. Ooh! Zhang Lingren's sculpture immediately stopped speaking, and it froze motionlessly on the spot, as if the spirit within it had been completely destroyed. Alright, it's done. Returning his primordial spirit to his body, Elder Wu chuckled softly. Spirit enchantment was an extremely delicate process, such that even 9-star spirit awakeners would have to proceed with it carefully, especially when dealing with important artifacts. However, if it was just destroying spirits, they could do it with ease. Seeing how simple the process was, the third elder heaved a sigh of relief. Since the sculptures of the predecessors would not be damaged in the process, it should be safe to leave them be. As long as the spirits were destroyed swiftly, the damage to Zhang clan's reputation would be kept to the bare minimum. I'll be troubling the both of you with this matter then, the third elder said once more politely. This is no trouble at all. There's no need to stand on ceremony. I'll have all of the spirits destroyed swiftly too. Elder Wu waved his hand casually, and he began making his way over to the other enchanted sculptures. However, halfway through his motion, he suddenly caught sight of the frozen Elder Mo in his peripheral vision. Glancing over, he saw that the latter's eyes were widened in horror. Perplexed, he asked, "What's wrong?" "Your head," Elder Mo exclaimed anxiously. "My head?" Bewildered by that remark, Elder Wu swiftly scanned his body with his spiritual perception, and the next instant, his knees caved in, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. He found that innumerable cacti and flowers had sprouted on his head, and they were growing bigger and bigger by the moment at an ever-increasing rate. Coming to realize what was going on, Elder Mo exclaimed in agitation, "You didn't manage to destroy the spirit completely earlier. It managed to dive into your primordial spirit, and it's planning on vying with you for the control of your body." Previously, Elder Wu had sent his primordial spirit into the sculpture to destroy the spirit within it, and he thought that he had succeeded. Little did he know that not only was the spirit not destroyed, it had even made use of this opportunity to sneak a seed of itself into his primordial spirit to take root. Just that single moment of carelessness was more than sufficient to place Elder Wu in the precarious situation that he currently was in. Of course, with Elder Wu's strength, it would be impossible for the spirit, which was much weaker relatively to him, to successfully possess his body. Nevertheless, it was still embarrassing for him to walk around with a head covered with cacti and flowers. This would be more than enough to provide him with an entire lifetime worth of shame. Damn it! Coming to realize what had happened as well, Elder Wu's body trembled in fury. As if responding to his rage, the cacti on his head also quivered nonstop. He swiftly scanned his primordial spirit, and a moment later he said, "This spirit has taken root in my Tianhai acupoint, so I won't be able to deal with it alone. I need you to help me destroy it using your Qingjin's ethereal destruction art." "Very well." Elder Mo nodded. He walked up to Elder Wu, and taking in a deep breath, he sent a rapid wave of soul energy into the latter's Tianhai acupoint. Pada! With a sound reminiscent of a needle popping a balloon. It sounded like something had been destroyed. Elder Wu swiftly inspected his primordial spirit, before heaving a sigh of relief. Phew! It seems like it has been completely destroyed this time around. Ah! Before he could finish his words, he caught sight of a cactus sprouting on Elder Mo's head. Lush like a bright green hat, it covered the entirety of Elder Mo's head. "Why you?" Elder Mo was also shocked beyond words. All he had done was use his soul energy to vanquish the spirit. Fearing that the spirit would plague him, he had even made sure to retract his soul energy immediately upon contact. How in the world did he fall for the spirit's assault too? What in the name of heavens is going on here? Elder Mo was really on the verge of tears. While other spirit awakeners were able to easily destroy any spirit just by suppressing it with their primordial spirit, they had actually ended up being possessed by it instead. As 9-star spirit awakeners, this was a situation that never should have happened to them. Yet both of them had actually fallen for the same thing. Just who in the world was the culprit that had enchanted such an irksome and troublesome spirit? Just as the duo was completely crazed by the situation before them, not knowing what they should do, the cacti on their heads suddenly shuddered a little before voicing out a series of words that vaguely sounded like human speech. I am Zhang Lingran. Is there anything I can help you with? Elder Wu. Elder Mo. Zhang Wuchen. It took a very long time before Elder Mo finally managed to eliminate the cactus fully from his head. The two 9-star spirit awakeners stared at the mini sculptures not too far away, and apprehension and fear inconspicuously flickered across their eyes. They had complete confidence in their spirit enchantment ability, but they had never met with something as bizarre as this before. There were many different spirit enchantment techniques in the world, so there were significant variations to the spirits that each spirit awakeners could create. Each of these variations had their own strengths and flaws, but when it came to the spirits in the sculptures, before them it was hard for even them to believe it. But it seemed like the spirits were completely flawless. No matter what kind of means they used against the spirit would be able to put up its guard against it, and even retaliate. It was to the point where they almost felt utterly helpless before it. Is there any other way to resolve this issue? After waiting for almost an hour, but having none of the spirits of the sculptures destroyed, Zhang Wuchen couldn't sit still anymore. Hearing those words, Elder Wu's face immediately flushed red in embarrassment. He awkwardly turned to Zhang Wuchen and clasped his fist. Third Elder, I'm afraid that the both of us aren't skilled enough to resolve this situation. Pardon me if I may ask, but in which Master Spirit Awakener's hands were these sculptures enchanted? They were enchanted by a sword practitioner from the Sanctum of Sages, Zhang Xian. Zhang Wuchen replied awkwardly. Zhang Xian? Elder Wu and Elder Mo traded glances, and they could see the confusion in each other's eyes. They did know a thing or two about the few extraordinarily talented Spirit Awakeners in the world, but never had they heard of this name before. Furthermore, a sword practitioner? What the heck was that? His spirit enchantment differs vastly from the style that we have learned, so I'm afraid that there's very little that we can do to help. If I may suggest, Third Elder, why don't you look for the person in question? Most likely, he's the only one who will be able to stop all of these sculptures. Elder Wu hesitated for a moment before saying, considering how even 9-star spirit awakeners like them were helpless before these sculptures, most likely, only the person in question would have the capability to stop the sculptures. Hearing those words, the third elder couldn't help but rub his glabella. To think that the lofty Zhang clan would be unable to resolve the problem brought about by a young lad. If it were to be made known to outsiders that they had to plead with the other party to resolve the situation, it would surely impair the Zhang clan's reputation. But from the current look of things, they would only be in a worse position if they were to allow the sculptures to continue messing around. Wu Zhen, lead the way. Sighing deeply in resignation, Zhang Wuchen waved his hand and said, knowing how serious the matter was, Elder Wu hurriedly led the way forward. The third elder quickly followed too, and after a moment of hesitation, Elder Wu and Elder Mo decided to follow too. They were interested to see the man who was able to enchant a spirit so powerful that even was able to render them completely helpless against it. Zhang Shi and Jian Qinsheng have come here to challenge the Zhang clan's swordsmanship, so they are staying in the competitors' residences. Elder Wu Zhen explained while making his way over. There were countless visitors who would come to the Zhang clan every single day. Some came to challenge the Zhang clan, whereas others came to pay a visit in order to better differentiate between the types of visitors. The locations of their accommodations were divided by the intentions behind their visit. Considering how Jian Qinsheng had a private grudge with their clan head, it went without saying that the place he resided in was the challenger's accommodation. There were also many other experts living in those accommodations, and their field of specialties ranged from swordsmanship, spearmanship, and saber arts to fist arts, palm arts, so on and so forth, you name it, there they would be. Of course, there were also plenty of occupational experts too. Quick, let's go over and take a look. Someone is challenging Zhang Ziqing. Zhang Ziqing? You mean the talented young lady who's renowned as the #1 genius painter in the Zhang clan? Indeed. She started learning painting when she was just 3. By 7, she has reached infused intentions, breathtaking verisimilitude by 9, spirit wisdom by 12, suspended imagery by 15, and while she's only 18 this year, and she's already capable of painting at the level of evocative vividness. Even the head of the painting guild is filled with praises for her. He views her as the #1 genius in painting in the past several thousand years. Not only so, there are hardly any peers who could compete with her in zither and chess either. Just who could be so blind as to challenge her? I'm not too sure either, but it seems to be a guest named Zhang Xian. From what I heard, that fellow saw that there were several people vying for her paintings, so he walked up to take a closer look. It seemed like he said some awful-sounding words that caused Zhang Ziqing's rage to flurry, thus eventually leading to the challenge. Awful-sounding words? I'm not too sure about it either, but that fellow seemed to have said that her foundations in painting were pathetic, and he even offered to teach her. Given that Zhang Ziqing is the #1 genius of the Painter Guild, one of the famed prodigies of the Zhang clan, it's only natural that she would be enraged by those words. As Zhang Wuchen headed forward, he could hear the surrounding crowd discussing heatedly. Let's head over to take a look. They had come here to find Zhang Xian. But who could have thought that the young man would get himself embroiled in another mess before the matter regarding the sculptures could even be settled yet? Following the footsteps of the crowd, they soon found Zhang Xian standing in the midst of a square. Jian Qingxing was standing by the side with his hand on his forehead, revealing a look of distress. The other star of the show, Zhang Ziqing, was glaring at Zhang Xian with a face reddened in fury, and her body was trembling nonstop. You wish to compete with me in the field of drawing? Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up nonchalantly as he asked. What are the stakes? If there are no stakes, I have no interest in wasting my time with a nameless nobody. He had heard that there were many people vying for the work for this young lady, so he came here in hopes of seeing a work that could astound him. However, after taking a closer look, he couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. It was indeed amazing that the young lady of her age was able to draw out a evocative vividness painting. But at the same time, it was precisely due to her young age and lack of experience that caused her conceptualization to be extremely immature, resulting in her expression of emotions being rather forced and awkward even. In a way, this was similar to how most beautiful poems from his previous world, that were able to last through the ages, were those that were crafted from the poet's own experiences and emotions. Only through personal experience would one really be able to create a work so vivid that others would be able to image and conceptualize, granting it great meaning, and thus longevity through the ages. On the other hand, those who drew solely through imagination would risk their feelings and imagery being underdeveloped, and as a result, it was inevitable that their conceptualization would be slightly lacking. Had it been anyone else, given Zhang Xian's low-profile personality, he wouldn't even have bothered to waste his words. It was in view that the other party was a genius of the Zhang clan that he couldn't resist giving a few feedbacks. But who could have thought that the other party would suddenly rage at him like that? You. Zhang Ziqing stared at Zhang Xian so intensely that it almost felt like her eyes could kill. The young man before her was simply too maddening. It was one thing for him to say that her painting was a complete nonsense, but to claim that she was a nameless nobody on top of that. Know that I, Zhang Ziqing, am a famous figure even in the Painter Guild. I'm a person whom no one in the upper society didn't know of. Just who do you think you Zhang Xian are? To declare that you wouldn't compete with me without anything on the stake, are you even qualified to be saying such words? Fine, I'll place a stake. This picture is known as the Winter Snow Treading Portrait. This is a masterpiece I have drawn last year in winter. As long as you can triumph over me, I can give it to you for free. As angry as Zhang Ziqing was, she could tell that the young man might really walk away if she were to refuse to make a bet. Thus, she flicked her wrist, and a scroll appeared in her hands. Unrolling it freely, a world of drifting snow and utmost coldness materialized before her eyes. It felt as if one would sink into that endless world of chill with just a single look. Seeing her taking out that painting, The crowd released shock exclamations before looks of envy appeared of their faces. For Ziqing to be provoked into taking out that painting, it seems like she's really angry this time around, Zhang Wuchen remarked while stroking his beard. Indeed, that is the single painting that Ziqing fancies the most, and she has always regarded it as her prized possession. There was once a master of the Painter Guild offered 50 pinnacle spirit stones for it. But even so, she still refused to sell it. Elder Wuzhen nodded. The painting was the work Zhang Ziqing produced under her best state, and it was unknown when she would be able to create a masterpiece of this caliber once more. As such, she treasured this painting as if it was her child. And even the elders of the Zhang clan didn't get too many chances to see it. Yet, to think that she would take it out as a stake for this challenge, it seemed like she was really provoked this time around. You sure is a stingy fellow. On the other hand, Zhang Xian was still wondering what Zhang Ziqing would put on the line when he saw that it was only a painting, and he couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. Don't you think it's embarrassing for a genius of the Zhang clan like you to try to hoodwink me with such an inferior painting? Let's just do this instead. If you were to lose to you, you have to give me 1 pinnacle spirit stone. 1 pinnacle spirit stone? Those words made Zhang Ziqing subconsciously clench her fists tightly together. Spitting through gritted teeth, she asked, "Are you certain?" Zhang Xian nodded nonchalantly. To him, the possession of the greatest value was spirit stones. As for a mere painting, he could always draw it out himself whenever he wanted it, so it held little value to him. Seeing how that fellow was unable to see through the value of her work, and simply deemed it as an inferior good, Zhang Ziqing harumphed angrily. Fine, 1 pinnacle spirit stones then. If you lose, I won't demand anything but a formal apology. Apologize? That's impossible. Zhang Xian shook his head. I have never lost in a challenge before. If you wish to challenge me, hurry up and get along with it. I still have much more important things to handle, so I don't have much time to spare you. Fine. Zhang Ziqing took in a deep breath and suppressed her emotions before looking at Zhang Xian once more. Just like how it's impossible to objectively determine which martial art is superior, it's also extremely difficult to discern between the quality of paintings of the same level. After all, everyone's preferences are shaped by their experiences and personality, so naturally, what appeals to each person can be vastly different. In order to ensure the fairness of our challenge, I have an artifact here known as the Wu Dao Mirror, and it's able to accurately determine the superiority and inferiority of a painting without the slightest discrepancy. As she said those words, she whipped out a round copper mirror, and it immediately floated quietly in the air. Wu Dao Mirror? Zhang Xian was perplexed. Indeed, this is an artifact created by the founder of the Painter Guild, Founder Wu Dao. It's capable of discerning the true level of a painting accurately. Even though the artifact I have over here is just an imitation, it's still more than enough to discern paintings of our level. Seeing how the young man did not know this at all, Zhang Ziqing's displeasure and scorn visibly deepened. The Wu Dao Mirror was an artifact that had been created by the founder of the Painter Guild, and it was capable of discerning the level of any painting in the world. Of course, the original artifact was stored within the guild, so the one in Zhang Ziqing's possession was just an imitation created by an expert. Nevertheless, it was still more than capable of impeccably discerning paintings of the 8th level. Can you allow me to take a closer look at the artifact? Zhang Xian asked. Here you go. Knowing that the other party would surely have to check the artifact in order to ensure the fairness of the assessment, Zhang Ziqing flicked her wrist, and the Wu Dao mirror flew over. Zhang Xian placed his finger on the mirror momentarily before pushing it back to Zhang Ziqing, saying, "All right, I'm done checking on it. Can we begin now?" A book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path, and a swift glance through it allowed him to confirm the capability of the artifact in assessing the level of a painting. You're already done examining the mirror? Zhang Ziqing was taken aback. It was just a moment ago that the young man did not even know what the Wu Dao mirror was. And yet, after the briefest contact with the mirror, he had already pushed the mirror back to her, saying that he was done checking on it. Are you kidding with me? This Wu Dao mirror you have over there was created by 9-star painter Zhi Yang 300 years ago. It was forged out of the golden pearl ore. And there are 37 formation marks harnessing the power of painting conceptualization inscribed on the mirror. The spirit infused into the mirror embodies Elder Zhi Yang's deep comprehension of paintings, so it will indeed be fair to use this artifact as the judge for this competition. Zhang Xian nodded. Why you? How did you know? Zhang Ziqing was astonished. This Wu Dao mirror had been stored in the Painter Guild ever since it was forged, and only upon hearing that the Zhang clan's clan conference was coming up, and that there would be challengers, did she apply with her teacher to take it out. It had taken her great effort in order to assimilate the artifact before she was able to learn this information. And yet, with just a single glance, the other party was already able to recite it with ease. Not even her teacher was capable of this. Oh, I happen to be an appraiser too, so I was able to recognize it with just a look, Zhang Xian replied with a casual wave of his hand. Appraiser? Zhang Ziqing was even more bewildered upon hearing this. Given that the other party had not even heard of the Wu Dao mirror before, it was a ridiculous notion for him to be able to identify the background of the Wu Dao mirror in her possession. This isn't an ability that appraisers possess. Who do you think you are trying to fool? Then again, Zhang Ziqing knew that this was not the time to dwell on such matters. Thus, she flicked her wrist, and a piece of white paper appeared on her table. Different from the Xian paper that painters usually used, this white paper had a glossy surface that seemed as if ink would be unable to soak through it. This is known as the legacy paper. It's made out of the fresh blood of saint beasts and tempered using the legacy rock. Paintings that are made on it are able to easily last a dozen millenniums without the slightest loss in color. For this reason, every single sheet of legacy paper is worth a huge fortune, Zhang Ziqing said. At the back of the crowd, Zhang Wuchen nodded. Paper to a painter was rather similar to a sword practitioner. The higher the grade of paper was, the more the conceptualization in their artwork would be able to be brought out. The legacy paper was considered a prized possession to all painters in the world. Due to its low production, even 9-star master teachers would only choose to use them on important occasions. The fact that Zhang Ziqing was willing to take it out for this challenge reflected how seriously she took the matter. A thought flashed across Zhang Wuchen's mind, and the truth suddenly dawned on him. Most likely, the news of the formation collapsing has reached her ears, and it just happened that the other party criticized her painting at this moment. Thus, she decided to take this opportunity to teach the other party a lesson. The news that the defense formation of the Zhang clan had been destroyed by Zhang Xian 4 hours ago, had already spread far and wide across the entire Zhang clan. Those of the younger generation should have already heard of the matter by now. As a person who took pride in her identity as a member of the Zhang clan, Zhang Ziqing surely felt angered by Zhang Xian humiliating the Zhang clan. As such, she decided to use this matter to teach that young man that there were just some people in the world whom he could not afford to offend. Otherwise, considering that this was the guest area, how could she, as one of the top geniuses of the Zhang clan, possibly come here? Not to mention, to so coincidentally get into a fight with Zhang Xian at that? Coming to realize this, Zhang Wuchen immediately did a quick scan around the room, and a moment later, he shook his head. Noting Zhang Wuchen's actions, Elder Wuzhen could tell what he was thinking, and he sent a telepathic message over. With all of them here, it seems like Zhang Xian will be in for some misfortune. This is fine too, Zhang Wuchen harumphed. It's about time for that fellow to learn that the members of our Zhang clan are no pushovers, so that he will learn to tone down that haughtiness of his. Most of the top figures of the younger generations had come over to watch the show, so it seemed like the first elder's plan was working as expected. Given that Zhang Xian was here to challenge the Zhang clan in the first case, it was perfectly fair for the younger generation of the Zhang clan to challenge him back. While the both of them were secretly talking to one another, Zhang Ziqing flicked her wrist, and a brush materialized in her hand. That's the Empyrean Saint Fox brush, made using the tail of the Empyrean Saint Fox. In terms of value, it far exceeds that of the legacy paper. to take out two invaluable treasures, one after another. It seems like the fellow whom Zhang Ziqing is facing is going to be utterly humiliated. That might not necessarily be the case, considering how he chose to accept Zhang Ziqing's challenge despite having seen her mastery in painting. It's likely that he has some skills in painting as well. Perhaps he might have artifacts that are even more formidable than that. Well, that's true too. Upon seeing the brush that Zhang Ziqing had taken out, a huge commotion immediately broke out amid the crowd. Those who had been invited there by the Zhang clan were all the top talents in their fields. While they might not necessarily have been painters, they would still have heard of some of the more renowned artifacts in painting. The Empyrean St. Fox brush happened to be one such artifact. Even when looking across the entire master-teacher continent, there were very few brushes that could compete with it. The time limit is when this incense finally burns out. If you fail to complete your painting by then, it will be considered as your loss, Zhang Ziqing said casually as she took out an ink slab. As she dabbed her brush in the ink slab, she lightly flicked her finger, and the incense stick at the center of the courtyard immediately lit up, emanating a slight fragrance. Since this was a challenge between the two of them, it was a given that there should be a time limit. Otherwise, one party would be able to postpone the challenge indefinitely under the pretext that they had not finished their painting yet. Very well, Zhang Xian replied. Judging from the rate at which the incense was burning, it appeared that they had less than an hour to finish their painting. And to be honest, it was no easy task to create a satisfactory painting within an hour's time. Let's begin then. Seeing that the young man had agreed to it, Zhang Ziqing lightly tapped her brush on the legacy paper, and a beautiful stroke of ink flowed out from the tip. That is the Snow-Earth painting technique. Legend has it that back then, while founder Wu Dao was observing the swallows in the air, he noted how their claws sunk deeply into the snow-laden earth, and inspired by that, he created the Snow-Earth painting technique. Paintings that are produced using this painting technique tend to have deeper conceptualization, and even before the final artwork is completed, just the painting process itself is enough to grip the hearts of the viewers. This painting technique has been passed down through the years, but only a small handful of incredibly talented painters are able to learn it. Who could have thought that not only would Ziqing be able to learn it, she's even able to execute it so smoothly. Without a doubt, this duel is going to end in our victory. From the looks of it, unless that fellow is able to produce a painting of the 9th level, or else there's no way he would be able to achieve victory. A commotion broke out in the surroundings. The instant that the young genius of the Zhang clan made her move, the crowd was immediately captured. Be it her brush, paper, ink, painting technique, or even state of mind, there was simply no flaw that one could pick with her painting. It was so impeccable that even naysayers could only sigh in awe at that sight. Not bad. Zhang Xian also nodded in approval. As an 8-star painter himself, his eye of discernment far exceeded that of the crowd. Naturally, he was able to tell that the young lady before him would not be an easy opponent to deal with. In fact, her skills were even above that of the inceptive sage of the Painter Guild, whom he had faced back at the Sanctum of Sages. Even though there were plenty of incredible geniuses all over the master-teacher continent gathered in the Sanctum of Sages, the inceptive sages there did not necessarily represent the pinnacle of their corresponding occupation. For example, even though Zhang Feng was the inceptive sage of the Spirit Awakener Guild, wielding incredible spirit enchantment abilities, if he competed with the genius who had just entered the Spirit Awakener Guild headquarters, Wang Ying, he would still pale slightly in comparison. Otherwise, the elders of the Spirit Awakener Guild would not have had to lower themselves to seek Zhang Xian's help. The same applied here. Even though the inceptive sage of the Painter Guild in the Sanctum of Sages was a rare genius in painting, it was still rather clear that he paled in comparison to Zhang Ziqing. Voila! Zhang Ziqing's brush seemed to dance nimbly in the air, creating a sight that pleased one's eyes. Despite her relaxed movements, every single movement that she made was pinpoint accurate, impeccably controlled without the slightest deviation. Every single brush stroke that materialized on the piece of paper seemed to emanate an intoxicating radiance, drawing one deeper and deeper into the world that Zhang Ziqing was creating under her hand. Zhang Shi, she has already drawn so much. You should get started too, or else you might really lose the challenge. While Zhang Xian was still leisurely observing Zhang Ziqing, an anxious voice suddenly sounded next to him. Turning his head, he saw Jian Qinsheng clasping his forehead helplessly. There's no need to panic. Zhang Xian took a glance at the incense stick and saw that there was still plenty of time for him to work, so he waved his hand leisurely, paying no heed at all to Jian Qinsheng's concern. He was an efficient painter, capable of finishing a painting within just 10 to 20 breaths. There was no need for him to rush at all. On the other hand, Jian Qinsheng suddenly recalled that the young man before him had defeated the inceptive sage of the Painter Guild in the Tower of Master Teachers, so he decided not to say too much about the matter. It's good that you're confident. Cough cough, Zhang Shi, is it fine if I discuss something with you meanwhile? Junior, feel free to speak your mind, Zhang Xian said. Jian Qinsheng pondered for a moment to sort out his words before speaking carefully. It's like this. You're currently a representative of the swordsmanship of our sanctum of sages. So if possible, can you not dabble too much in the other supporting occupations? To be honest, he was starting to regret bringing that fellow here. They should have been there to challenge the Zhang clan's swordsmanship. But before they could face any of the Zhang clan's sword practitioners, the young man had already torn down the other party's formation and enchanted all of their sculptures. And now, he was even challenging one of the Zhang clan's geniuses in painting. Formations, enchantment, painting, and appraising. At this rate, will anyone still remember that you are a sword practitioner? So, I'm begging you, can you pay some heed to your identity before doing anything else? You are currently my senior. Is it really fine for you to be showing off in the other occupations as well? I guess I have been acting a little carelessly ever since arriving in the Zhang clan. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian scratched his head in embarrassment. Pardon me, it seems like I have been lacking thought in my actions. He had been so focused on trying to put down the Zhang clan that he almost forgot the primary reason he was at the Zhang clan. He was supposed to challenge the top sword practitioners of the Zhang clan, so as to cleanse Jian Qinsheng's humiliation, and it was indeed inappropriate of him to allow his attention to wander to other stuff. Others would think that he was just a jack of all trades, specializing in nothing at all. Seeing that Zhang Xian had caught his drift, Jian Qinsheng nodded in relief. It's fine. It'll do as long as you remember our primary purpose here. While he did feel a little uncomfortable at seeing the young man dabbling in other occupations and provoking the Zhang clan at every turn, by no means was he mad at the young man. Rather, his feelings were still more sided toward gratitude. After all, if not for the young man, there was a good chance that he never would have found an opportunity to get back at the Xing Sword Saint. I understand. I'll keep that in mind. Zhang Xian nodded. At this moment, a resounding round of applause suddenly broke out around them. Amazing. She's already going to finish her work soon. What marvelous artwork. Fairy Ziqing, would you consider selling your painting to me? To be able to finish such a beautiful piece within a short period of time, as expected of the top genius of the Painter Guild. Impassioned discussion could be heard from the surroundings. Zhang Xian glanced over and saw that Zhang Ziqing had already put down her brush, and a completed painting showed its form to the world. It was a bamboo painting. There was no other greenery or plant to complement the beauty of the bamboo. But what was particularly striking about it was how each of the towering, emerald bamboo combs seemed to rise out of the surface of the painting. They shuddered in response to the light breeze whisking across the square. It felt like each of the dozen or so bamboo combs had their own life and emotions, their own unique form and soul. As such, despite the lack of any other complementing details in the painting to act as contrast with the bamboos, the painting did not feel monotonous at all. If anything, each individual bamboo seemed to contrast with one another. To be able to bestow your painting life. Not too bad. Zhang Xian nodded in approval. He had thought that he would be able to win with just a casual drawing. But from the looks of it, things would not be as easy as he thought. The young lady's caliber was much higher than he had expected, Painting did not necessarily have to be complicated. Just because a painting was more colorful and intricate did not mean that it would be of a higher level. Just like how the greatest sound was soundless and the greatest form was formless, most masterpieces tended to be exceptionally simple as well. In a sense, this was similar to how it was easier to gauge a chef's ability through having them prepare the simplest of dishes. In fact, the simpler the painting was, the more it would reflect the painter's capability. If one were to just take a brief glance at her artwork, its simplicity would make it appear to be just at the level of reality depiction. But in truth, if one examined it closely, one would realize that every single one of these bamboo culms was so detailed that it was almost as if they were all alive. Rather than calling it a work of art, it would be more accurate to say that new lives had been created. If not for Zhang Ziqing's young age and the limitations of her cultivation, she would have already been able to produce pinnacle artwork and take the final step forward to become a real 9-star master teacher. It's no wonder others said that it would be difficult to triumph over her without a painting of the 9th level, Zhang Xian thought. Given the quality of Zhang Ziqing's artwork, it would really require a true 9th level painting in order to outdo her. What? Does Zhang Shi intend to admit defeat? While Zhang Xian was deep in thought, a young lady's voice sounded. Turning his head over, he saw Zhang Ziqing looking at him with a cold sneer on her lips. She finally understood why the young man chose to gamble with just a pinnacle spirit stone instead of with her painting. Considering how valuable her painting was, the young man might not necessarily have been able to come up with something of equivalent value to it once he lost. In the end, he was just preparing an escape route should things not go in his favor. Admit defeat? Why would I do that? Zhang Xian shook his head. I do acknowledge that your painting is not too bad, and out of respect for you as a painter, I'll be getting serious. As he said those words, Zhang Xian flicked his wrist and whipped out a sword. He swung it in the air before shaking his head and stowing it back into his storage ring. After which, he took out another sword and swung it, but he also shook his head and placed it back into his storage ring. He repeated the same action another 3 times, before he finally seemed to have found a sword to his liking. He swiftly scanned his surroundings before stomping his feet lightly on the ground. Hula! A stone next to his leg flew up, catching everyone's attention in an instant. I'm going to start now, Zhang Xian said casually as he drove his sword toward the stone. You aren't going to use a brush or the legacy paper to compete with me, but a mere sword and stone? Zhang Ziqing widened her eyes in disbelief. In an instant, she felt as if the other party was intentionally trying to humiliate her, and a burst of rage surged through her veins. She was the #1 genius of the Zhang clan, as well as one of the top geniuses of the Painter Guild. It was already an insult for her to lower her standing to compete with a nameless nobody. But the other party was even taking the entire challenge as a joke, doing whatever he pleased without any regard. Is this what you meant by getting serious? Which painter doesn't use a brush and paper in their painting but a sword? While Zhang Ziqing was feeling so stifled that she could have exploded on the spot, Jian Qingqing's body also trembled upon seeing the sight, and he nearly spurted blood. It was just a moment ago that he had told the other party that he had come here as a representative of the sanctum of sage's swordsmanship, when the next moment, he really used a sword to paint. The blade of a sword was sharp and cold, making it far more difficult to draw and paint using it compared to a brush. My intention was only to remind you of your own identity and responsibility, so that you wouldn't lose sight of your goal due to these insignificant matters. I didn't ask you to make things difficult for yourself and put yourself at risk of losing a challenge. The young lady is equipped with the Empyrean St. Fox brush and legacy paper, and she has even executed the formidable snow earth painting technique. On the other hand, as if an ordinary sculptor, you chose to carve a stone instead. Do you really have to take the challenge so lightly? In this moment, despair was written all over Jian Qingqing's face. Without a doubt, it was their loss this time around. He could not even bear to bring himself to look on anymore. Could that fellow's brain possibly be rusty? Zhang Wuchen was also shocked to the point where he could not close his mouth. He had seen plenty of lunatics, But he had not seen one who was so mentally challenged before. To paint using a sword, just what kind of lunacy was that young man up to this time around? Most likely, he feels that he's unable to surpass Ziqing, but at the same time, he doesn't want to embarrass himself, Elder Wuxian hypothesized. That could possibly be the case. After some thought, Zhang Wuqian was still unable to decipher Zhang Xian's intentions, so he could only nod in agreement. As the #1 painting genius of the Zhang clan, Zhang Ziqing's aptitude in painting far surpassed that of her peers, and her skills were on par with most veteran 8-star pinnacle painters. Even if the young man had successfully cleared the Tower of Master Teachers, the crowd still did not think that it was likely for him to emerge victorious. Since the young man was unable to win, the only way he would be able to save some of his pride was to mess up the entire challenge. This way, even if he lost, he could still shirk the responsibility to his brush and paper. Coming to realize the young man's motive, Zhang Wuqian shook his head as he shot the young man another glance. And once again, he found himself in a flabbergasted position. Wielding a sword in his hand, Zhang Xian's sword tip was more than a chi away from the stone. He swung his arms nonstop, covering the stone with a barrage of sword chi. But for some reason, all of the sword chi seemed to brush past the stone, not leaving the slightest mark on it. To the crowd, it appeared as if he was possessed by some kind of spirit. There was not a single person in the square who could comprehend what he was up to. Could that fellow possibly have gone mad? I think so too. Otherwise, why the heck would he suddenly dance with his sword at this moment? The only expressions that could be seen on the crowd's faces were dumbstruck looks. Most of them were from privileged backgrounds, and they had been blessed with the opportunity to see all kinds of painting techniques from master painters. Some painters preferred a more refined painting method. Some adopted a wilder painting technique. Some were fond of a more flirtatious painting style, and some chose a more stable and dignified painting manner. With Zhang Ziqing, for example, every single one of her brush strokes was elegant, making it a pleasure to behold. On the other hand, the young man before him was dancing around wildly, as if he was suffering from a stroke, and to make things worse, he was not leaving the slightest mark on the stone at all. Did he come here just to fool around? Even Zhang Ziqing could not help but rub her eyes, wondering if she was seeing things. It was just a moment ago that the young man had haughtily declared that he had never lost in any challenges before. And all of a sudden, he had suddenly become a madman prancing around the area. I'm done. While the crowd was still in a stunned state, the young man exhaled deeply and wiped off the sweat from his forehead, before wearily flicking his sword back into his storage ring. Hula! The stone fell onto a table not too far away, just beside the bamboo painting that Zhang Ziqing had created. You're done! Zhang Ziqing exclaimed in astonishment. She subconsciously glanced at the incense stick that she had lit earlier, and it happened to extinguish at this very moment. The young man did manage to finish his work on time. But, just what the heck was with that stone? I'm competing with you in the field of painting, not sculpting. Furthermore, even if we were competing in the field of sculpting, you have to at least leave some marks on the stone in order for it to even be considered a sculpture. Every single person here can testify that your sword hasn't touched the stone at all. So, what the heck are you up to? More importantly, all you did was randomly swing your sword for around 10 to 20 breaths? You didn't even do anything at all. So how did you get so tired that even your face has turned pale? Even if you want to act, at least do it in a more convincing situation than this. It's almost as if you are taking all of us for fools. Unable to stand it, Zhang Ziqing turned to Zhang Xian and said, Are you certain that this is the work you wish to challenge me with? If you aren't done yet, I don't mind giving you more time. Since she was competing with the young man, it would only be worthwhile for her if she defeated the young man when the young man was in his peak state. If the young man's condition had been a little off in the past hour, she did not mind giving him another chance to showcase his true capability. There's no need for that. I'm already done painting, Zhang Xian said with a chuckle. He gestured forward gentlemanly with his hand and said, We should get the Wu Dao mirror to check on our work now. Check. Seeing the smile on the young man's face, Zhang Ziqing's cheeks could not help but quiver in frenzy. All you did was carry a slab of stone over. Even though you did swing your sword wildly for roughly 20 breaths, you didn't leave the slightest mark on it. Do you honestly think your slab of stone is able to match my pinnacle 8th level painting? I really want to pry open your brain and see where you get your confidence from. Indeed. Zhang Xian nodded. Of course, if you admit defeat, we can simply skip the checking phase. Admit defeat? Zhang Ziqing nearly burst into laughter. You want me to admit defeat to a mere stone? You must be off your rocker. Have you not taken your medicine today? Indeed. You should have seen with your own eyes how much effort I put in to complete this masterpiece. I think it would be impossible for me to produce a second one like this within a short period of time. Zhang Xian said with an air of solemnity. He gazed into the distance, and the solitude of a man who stood at the top of the world could be seen reflected in his eyes. Effort. Masterpiece. The crowd nearly fell to the ground hearing those impetuous words. The young man did not even leave the slightest mark on the stone, such that not even the slightest dent or chip could be seen. If this could be considered a masterpiece, then even a dog could be considered a master painter. And the young man still had the cheek to say effort. Effort my ass. Seeing how fearless the young man was, Zhang Ziqing harumphed in displeasure. Are you sure you want to use the Wu Dao mirror? Of course, Zhang Xian exclaimed with a wave of his hand, assuming the disposition of a true expert. Very well. I'll make you concede to me. Zhang Ziqing harumphed coldly. She waved her hand, and the Wu Dao mirror appeared once more. She stretched her finger forward and tapped the Wu Dao mirror lightly, and a brilliant ray of light immediately reflected from the mirror. Junior Zhang Ziqing beseeches the Wu Dao mirror to help assess the mastery of the paintings we have before us. Hula! In an instant, the Wu Dao mirror was brought to life. It emanated a radiance of 7 colors, which swiftly shrouded the bamboo painting. A short moment later, a voice emerged from the Wu Dao mirror. Bamboo painting. The bamboo culms are infused with life, and a breeze whispers amid the mountain, thus placing the painting in harmony with nature. It's neither abrupt nor excessive, a truly rare pinnacle 8th level masterpiece. Upon hearing the judgment, Zhang Ziqing visibly heaved a sigh of relief, and a look of pride surfaced on her face. The fact that she had received such an appraisal from the Wu Dao mirror meant that even if her bamboo painting still was not at the level of her winter snow treading portrait, it did not pale too much in comparison to it. Knowing that everything was in her grasp, Zhang Ziqing shot Zhang Xian a haughty glance. Humph, let's see how the Wu Dao mirror will judge your work. Tzizi. After assessing her work, the Wu Dao mirror began scanning the stone on the table too. All of a sudden, it paused for a brief moment before resuming its scanning once more. As if it could not fully perceive the artwork before it, it scanned the stone for the 3rd time. Only then did it finally come to a halt, and the voice from before appeared once more. This painting is truly a one-of-kind masterpiece. I hereby judge this painting to be superior to the one from before. Superior? Zhang Ziqing staggered on the spot, and her eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. She could not help but wonder if she was hearing things. Why would the Wu Dao mirror suddenly say such incomprehensible words? That shabby stone had just been picked off the street, so how could it be a one-of-kind masterpiece? What is going on here? Zhang Wuchen and the others were dumbstruck too. I have lost. Unable to accept what she had just heard, Zhang Ziqing asked once more. Wu Dao mirror, you said that I have lost? Unable to accept what she had just heard, Zhang Ziqing asked once more. Indeed, even though his artwork utilizes the simplest drawing method, it harnesses the very essence of painting. I can tell you that this is a feat which even the average 9-star painter would be incapable of. Your painting is indeed not too bad, but it pales far in comparison to his. Wu Dao mirror replied. Artifacts on such a level already possess their own consciousness, and were able to interact with humans. But all he did was to swing his sword a few times, and he didn't even leave a single mark on the stone. How could this be something which even 9-star painter would be unable to match up to? Zhang Ziqing felt like clawing her hair in frenzy. You can't just spout nonsense like that. All of us are looking over here. Everyone here can testify that all that fellow did was to pick up a mere stone and swing his sword at it. Not the slightest bit of his sword chi had nicked the stone. And the stone looked the exact same as when he had picked it up. Where was the drawing you spoke of then? Come closer and examine it carefully. You will surely be able to notice its ingenuity. Noting Zhang Ziqing's incomprehension, the Wu Dao mirror simply left these words behind before falling silent. Its voice carried a dreamy tone to it, seemingly still deeply immersed in the beauty of the artwork it had just seen. Zhang Ziqing hesitated for a moment before walking over to the table. She lowered her gaze to examine the stone in closer detail. There was still some dirt stuck to the surface of the stone, but other than that, there was nothing particular to note about it. There's nothing here at all. Even after a close-up look, Zhang Ziqing was still unable to find any marks that could have been left behind by the earlier burst of sword qi, so she couldn't help but feel even more perplexed. Thus, she released her spiritual perception to take an even closer look at the stone. What that was not visible to the eye, perhaps, it would be visible to her spiritual perception. As soon as her spiritual perception wrapped itself around the stone, Zhang Ziqing's body visibly stiffened, and her body began trembling nonstop. This. Her lips quivered ceaselessly, fully displaying her disbelief at what she was seeing. What's wrong? Noticing the peculiarity with Zhang Ziqing, Zhang Wuqian and the others frowned as well. They extended their spiritual perception toward the stone too, and what they saw left them frozen on the spot. Indeed, this stone is an artwork which I drew out using my sword. The stone that I picked up earlier has, in fact, been reduced to dust and is currently stored in my storage ring. And the one right before your eyes is a painting. Seeing that they had managed to notice what was different about his stone, Zhang Xian chuckled softly. While it might appear as if he was just wildly releasing a barrage of sword qi earlier, leaving nary a mark on the stone at all, in truth, he was creating an exact replica of the stone that was earlier seen. Back when he was just a 7-star painter, he had already comprehended suspended imagery, allowing him to paint on mid-air. Naturally, now that he was an 8-star painter, his proficiency in it was much higher than before. Even though the painting was created by sword qi, it would still be difficult even for a 9-star painter to discern its true form without taking a closer look with his spiritual perception. It was to the point where even the two elders of the Zhang clan, Wuqian and Wuzhen, despite watching the entire process from the start to the end, didn't notice the slightest anomaly with the stone. They couldn't have imagined that the stone that was picked up from the ground had already vanished altogether, and what was right before their eyes was actually a painting. To think that we didn't notice that the stone is actually a painting. Ziqing was able to grant life to the bamboo, making it appear real, but he has already transcended that level. Under his deft hand, the distinction between reality and painting has been torn down, confounding everyone with his artwork. Coming to realize the situation, Zhang Wuqian and Zhang Wuzhen were trembling in disbelief. Real 9-star painters were indeed capable of producing artwork that seemed so lifelike that it completely fused into the real world, making hard for one to determine what was real and imaginary. Just that no one thought that the young man would be capable of the same feat too. Could it be that he was already a 9-star painter? If that was the case, wasn't it a little too terrifying? I have lost. Zhang Ziqing reached out to stroke the stone, only to find that its texture was also of no difference from that of a real stone. Without using her spiritual perception, there would really be no way for her to discern that it was just a mere drawing. In that instant, her face flushed completely pale. All along, she had thought the other party was just messing around. But who could have thought that he had been painting seriously? Furthermore, his artwork was of such a high caliber that no one was able to discern it. It was no wonder why the Wu Dao mirror had declared the match to be her loss. She did indeed lose. And it was an utter defeat at that. From the very start, she never stood a chance against him. If you are able to create an artwork of such a tier, with just your sword, just what kind of paintings would you be able to produce with a brush in hand then? Unable to take it any longer, she turned her gaze to the young man and said, previously, when the other party said that he was going to get serious, She thought that he would really go all out. Yet, contrary to her expectations, he whipped out a sword instead of a brush. If the young man was already able to produce such an artwork far beyond her capabilities, with a sword in hand, she really shuddered to imagine just how formidable his painting prowess would be with a brush in hand. I wasn't lying to you when I said that I was going to get serious. I did give my everything in this painting, and I wasn't going easy on you by using a sword. Noting the young lady's astounded face, Zhang Xian explained with a smile. I must admit that you have a deep understanding of painting. Otherwise, I would have simply painted with just a blade of grass instead of with my sword. Actually, as long as you put your heart into your painting, it doesn't really matter whether you are wielding a brush or a sword. Blade of grass. Hearing that the young man was actually intending to use something like that to compete with her, Zhang Ziqing's face twitched a little. How were you intending to paint with that? Simple. Zhang Xian quickly took a look at his surroundings before tapping his finger lightly. In the garden not too far away, a blade of grass flew over and fell into his palm, following which, he flicked the blade of grass lightly. Hula! The water in a nearby pond immediately rose up and lightly soaked the blade of grass, following which, he began moving the blade of grass slowly in the air. Tzi. The surrounding air grew increasingly viscous along with Zhang Xian's movements, and in just a short moment, a majestic flowing river appeared before everyone's eyes. It raced rapidly with a ferocious roar, and it felt as if it would overflow and flood the entire square in an instant. Using just water, he was able to draw out a river flow using suspended imagery. Zhang Ziqing gulped down a mouthful of saliva. She would always need to use the most valuable brush and ink in her artworks, as she felt that these were necessary tools in order for her to truly bring out the essence of her painting and pieces that she would be satisfied with. However, after watching the other party's creation, she realized that her line of thought might have been too shallow. Painting didn't necessitate the use of a brush. Look closely, and the entire world would be a brush and a canvas. There was no element which one couldn't incorporate into one's painting. So, this was a true prodigy's interpretation of painting, as well as the true essence of painting. The conception behind this river painting of yours is also of a much higher level than my bamboo painting. Zhang Ziqing shook her head and sighed deeply. As reluctant as she was to admit it, the young man was indeed far ahead of her in the field of painting. Even this river painting which he had created at a whim was far more profound than the bamboo painting which she carefully produced with all her might. Ah, you need not get so disheartened. I was able to deepen my understanding of painting significantly while drawing out the stone, and that's the only reason why I'm able to create a decent painting with just a blade of grass now. Zhang Xian explained. He hadn't drawn much after assimilating 8-star painter books, and the earlier drawing of the stone was the first time he had drawn seriously in a long while. This practical experience had granted him a much deeper insight into painting, thus bringing his mastery to a deeper level. And it was with this experience that he was able to surpass Zhang Ziqing with the work he painted at a whim. You managed to deepen your understanding of painting while drawing out the stone? Zhang Ziqing nearly keeled over. She had always prided herself on her unparalleled talent in painting, but it seemed like she was really no match against the young man before her. The gap between them was so huge that for the first time in her life, she felt a hint of despair and helplessness, as if she was in a race, facing a rival whom she would never be able to catch up with. All of a sudden, a young man amidst the crowd shouted out, "Fairy Ziqing, I remember that you once said that if anyone of the younger generation surpasses you in the field of painting, regardless of whom the person is, you would marry him without any hesitation. Does that vow still holds now?" Zhang Ziqing was visibly stunned by that remark for a moment. She couldn't help but turn her gaze to Zhang Xian, and a frown slowly deepened itself on her forehead. Known as one of the most talented female offspring of the Zhang clan, Zhang Ziqing was a celebrity among the younger generation. On top of that, she had a graceful disposition and ravishing looks, which led to her having many suitors. Each day, there would be many men who tried to approach her, hoping that they might just luck out and win her fancy, and this had become a major source of annoyance for her. As such, she had once declared that no matter who the person was, as long as his age was not beyond 30, and he was able to surpass her in the fields of zither, chess, and painting, she would marry that man without any hesitation. While she did say such words, it was just to stop others from harassing her. After all, she did not think that there would be anyone in the world who could best her in those 3 fields. But who could have thought that there would a man who was actually able to triumph over her in the field of painting so easily? Even though this fellow's personality isn't too good, and his words are very jarring, there's no denying that he's a person of great ability. It might not be too bad to marry him. Such was the thought that flashed across Zhang Ziqing's mind upon hearing someone amid the crowd reminding her of the matter. Never in her life had she contemplated the notion of marrying any man before, as she had always felt that they were all unworthy of her consideration. But if it was this man, she might just be able to grudgingly accept it. As soon as such a notion took root in her mind, it swiftly grew at a pace where even she was unable to repress it anymore. Thus she turned to Zhang Xian and asked, "May I know if Zhang Shi is skilled at the zither too?" "I do play it from time to time," Zhang Xian replied with a nod. Well, he was actually an 8-star demonic tunist, but it would still be best for him to keep a low profile. Then what about chess? I'm afraid that I don't know a thing about it. Zhang Xian shook his head. He had learned many occupations, but chess simply was not in the set of skills that he was interested in, so he had never really sought to learn it. As such, it could be said that he knew next to nothing about it. It's fine, I can teach you. Does Zhang sure want to drop by my humble abode to have a further discussion about the arts? Zhang Ziqing asked with a slightly reddened face. The intention behind her words was very clear. In a sense, this could already be considered as good as a confession. Discussion about the arts? Zhang Xian frowned a little before shaking his head. It's only out of convenience that I have picked up those arts, and I consider them a pastime. I have already spent 2 days studying painting, and pardon me, but I'm afraid that I have no interest in devoting any more time into it. He was here to face-slap the Zhang clan and force the young prodigy to appear. So how could he possibly have any spare time to learn about the arts or the whatnot? Besides, I can further my understanding of the arts just by collecting the relevant books. Do I need to waste my time discussing them with you? Hearing the young man's rejection, Zhang Ziqing's complexion immediately turned rather awful. However, she swiftly noticed a certain detail in the young man's statement, and she could not help but ask, "Did you say that you have only spent 2 days studying painting?" "I'd reckon so." Zhang Xian pondered for a moment before nodding. "I think that should be roughly it." The only reason he had learned painting was to meet the prerequisites required for his master-teacher promotions. He had spent roughly 2 hours for each level, so to reach 8-star, it would have taken him around 16 hours. Even adding up the time he had taken to browse through painting books and practice hands-on painting, the duration still should not exceed 2 days. However, being the humble man that he was, he chose to round the number up. You have only studied painting for 2 days, but you were able to achieve such a deep understanding of painting? Zhang Ziqing was unable to believe the words the young man was spouting. On the other hand, Zhang Xian was not willing to dwell too much on such a useless topic, so he reached out his hand and demanded, "Since you've lost the bet, it's about time for you to pay up what you owe me." It was only because of the pinnacle spirit stone that he had accepted the challenge. Since he had won the challenge, it was a given that he should claim his rightful reward. The bet. Recalling their bet, Zhang Ziqing could not help but chuckle at how trivial the matter was. You should have heard what the young man said earlier. As long as anyone is able to best me in painting, zither and chess, I will marry that person without any questions asked. Considering how you are far beyond me in the field of painting, as long as your mastery in zither playing and chess are decent, I can consider spending the rest of my life with you. As her voice trailed off, Zhang Ziqing's face reddened in embarrassment. For a lady, it was already very bold for her to speak of such an embarrassing matter so forthrightly. What are you talking about? Are you trying to talk your way out of paying me my pinnacle spirit stone? Seeing that the young lady had no intention of paying the pinnacle spirit stone, Zhang Xian's eyes immediately bulged in fury. They had already agreed upon it prior to the duel. There were so many eyewitnesses around them that could testify to that. How could she renege on her promise after losing the bet? And not to mention, even force him to marry her? You must be dreaming. Ah! Zhang Ziqing was startled by the unanticipated response. Nothing was going as she had imagined. A loss is a loss. No matter what, you must pay me 1 pinnacle spirit stone. Zhang Xian exclaimed indignantly. Don't bother coming up with excuses. There's no way I'm going to let you avoid payment today. You! Zhang Ziqing nearly lost her sanity in that instant. In the young man's eyes, was she not even worth a single pinnacle spirit stone? If others learned that she, one of the top geniuses of the Zhang clan, had been snubbed over a mere pinnacle spirit stone, she would become the laughingstock of the entire master-teacher continent. To this, Zhang Xian's mind really works in a very odd manner. Zhang Wuchen could not believe what he was hearing. It took a very long moment before he was able to mutter those words. Indeed, this is the first time I've seen someone daring to reject Ziqing, and not to mention, with such an absurd reason at that. Elder Wuzhen also found the situation inconceivable. As the saying goes, even the mightiest of heroes are unable to overcome the ordeal of a beauty. With Zhang Ziqing's capabilities and looks, she was a person who commanded countless pursuers in the upper society. And yet, she had been rejected for a mere pinnacle spirit stone. Taking a step back, if the young man had really married Zhang Ziqing, given the latter's connections in the Zhang clan, he would have been able to obtain all of the pinnacle spirit stones that he wanted in the world. So, was it not simply irrational to fuss over a single pinnacle spirit stone? After a moment of thought, with a shake of his head, Zhang Wuchen remarked, most likely, he doesn't want to have any ties with the Zhang clan. Someone as talented as Zhang Xian could not possibly be a fool, so there was no way he would be unable to comprehend the intention behind Zhang Ziqing's words. Nevertheless, he still chose to say those maddening words. From this, it was apparent that he did not want to be too deeply involved with the Zhang clan. Perhaps Zhang Xian's rejection of Zhang Ziqing had provoked the other geniuses of the Zhang clan. A young man flew forth from the crowd and landed right in the center of the square. Zhang Xian, I am Zhang Jiang from the Zhang clan. I would like to challenge you. What do you want to challenge me in? Zhang Xian asked leisurely. He would have to be blind to not notice the younger members of the Zhang clan lurking all around the crowd. He knew that they were trying to put him down, presumably due to what had happened to the defense formation at the entrance earlier on. However, since the purpose behind his visit to the Zhang clan was to stir the pot as much as possible, he did not mind having them coming at him. I don't have many talents, but I do have some confidence in my beast-taming ability. Since you dared to insult an esteemed member of our Zhang clan, I hope that you have the guts to accept my challenge too, Zhang Jiang said with fury burning in his eyes. In contrast to Zhang Jiang's hostile attitude, Zhang Xian's response was rather placid, as if he was completely unperturbed by the other party's words. How do you wish to compete? Simple. 3 years ago, the Zhang clan managed to capture a ferocious saint beast. Till now, no one has been able to tame it, and even I have failed against it. As long as you can successfully tame that saint beast, I'll accept my defeat, Zhang Jiang said. What if I can't tame it? Zhang Xian shook his head. Judging from what Zhang Jiang was saying, he seemed to be implying that it would be his loss if he failed to tame the saint beast. But this would be an unfair challenge. The fact that Zhang Jiang was unable to tame the saint beast showed that the saint beast was a tricky fellow to deal with. If he failed to tame the saint beast, it could only mean that the saint beast was beyond their abilities to deal with. It did not necessarily mean that Zhang Jiang's beast-taming skills were superior to his. While Zhang Xian was confident in his beast-taming skills, the effectiveness of his tricks was limited to beasts who possessed the dragon bloodline, or were slightly weaker than him. Against those that were much stronger than him, he had no foolproof method of taming them. I heard that you were able to easily tame the spirit in our defense formation, so you shouldn't have any trouble taming a saint beast, right? A smile crept onto Zhang Jiang's lips as he continued. I have been with the saint beast for 3 days so far, But our intimacy is already at 25 points. If you can reach a level of intimacy exceeding that within 3 days, I'll admit that you are superior to me. 25 points. Hearing that there was a fairer basis for comparison, Zhang Xian finally nodded in agreement. Then if I tame the saint beast, will I be able to take it away with me? This was something that had to be discussed beforehand. After all, this saint beast belonged to the Zhang clan, so naturally, they would have to discuss its allocation beforehand, or it could lead to unnecessary complications. Even though this saint beast was caught by the clan head, if you are able to tame it, it should be fine for you to take it away, Zhang Jiang said. At this point, a vicious glint flashed across his eyes before he continued. If you lose the challenge, I won't demand any pinnacle spirit stones or the like from you. However, I want you to kneel down, apologize to Ziqing, and scram right out of the Zhang clan. Very well, I accept your challenge. Zhang Xian nodded. While he wasn't too sure whether he wielded the ability to tame the saint beast or not, he didn't think that it would be too difficult for him to surpass the record of the young man before him. Not to mention, the saint beast was captured by the father of the young prodigy. Perhaps, if he could tame that saint beast, he might just be able to lure the young prodigy out? And what better way was there to exact vengeance for Jian Qinsheng than to pummel the son of his nemesis? Well, if that young prodigy still didn't dare to appear even after that, surely at least the father would appear? While it would be regrettable not being able to beat up the young prodigy, beating up the father would at least help alleviate some bit of his rage after all. Who asked him to bear such a shameless son? And as the saying goes, the son heirs the father's mistake. Let's begin then. Seeing that he had managed to obtain Zhang Xian's agreement, a hint of excitement flashed across Zhang Jiang's eyes. With a wave of his hand, an elder behind him hurriedly left the area. Not too long later, the elder returned back to the square, and with a wave of his hand, a massive black cage appeared before everyone's eyes. The cage spanned roughly 40 meters in length, and mysterious-looking inscriptions marked its surface. It was apparent that some powerful formation had been cast on it so as to prevent the life form imprisoned within it from escaping. Within the cage, a saint beast which bore some resemblance to a lion could be seen lying on the ground. It lazily scanned its surroundings for a moment before closing its eyes and returning back to sleep. The saint beast wasn't too large in size, spanning only 4 meters from head to tail. Its appearance wasn't particularly frightening, and its aura wasn't particularly overwhelming either. But for some reason, upon seeing the saint beast, the crowd in the area narrowed their eyes in astonishment. It's the Inferno Qilin. This is the legendary saint beast whose cultivation reaches Saint 9 Dan at maturity. They are extremely rare beings, and even throughout the entire history of the Master-Teacher continent, there have been very few cases of them being caught and tamed. It's no wonder why even a beast-taming genius like Zhang Jiang would be helpless before it. If I could tame a saint beast like that, I would instantaneously gain the prowess comparable to a Saint 9 Dan expert. Easier said than done. The ancient Qilin bloodline runs through the veins of the Inferno Qilin, and its ego is much bigger than whatever you can ever imagine. Putting aside taming it, you would have difficulty just trying to approach it. If it's really that easy, Xingming Sword Saint wouldn't have to resort to imprisoning it in the Zhang clan for 3 years straight. That's true. After the shock of seeing the Inferno Qilin with their own eyes, the faces of the crowd gradually turned grim. Third Elder, should we stop the challenge? Elder Wuzhen hesitated for a moment before directing this question to Zhang Wuchen. It's fine, let them be. Zhang Wuchen shook his head. But in order to tame the Inferno Qilin, Zhang sure would have to enter the metal cage. As soon as he does so, he would come under its frenzied assault. Over the past 3 years, the Inferno Qilin has already hurt 13 9-star beast tamer. Considering how Zhang Sure is here to challenge our swordsmanship, if it were to get out that he was injured by our saint beast, I fear that this might reflect badly on our Zhang clan. Elder Wuzhen said. He was not making a mountain out of a molehill. While others might not be aware of the circumstances surrounding the Inferno Qilin, he knew full well how vicious that fellow could be. It was simply too difficult a fellow to deal with. No matter what kind of delicious food or treasures one placed in front of it outside the cage, it wouldn't even bother shooting it a second glance. And when one attempted to enter the cage to negotiate with it, one would swiftly come under assault too. It was precisely due to this that many 9-star beast tamers were injured by it over the past 3 years. Clearly, Zhang Jiang had malicious intentions in mind when he made such a challenge to Zhang Xian. He was intending to make use of this huge fellow to teach the other party a lesson. I can tell what that fellow Zhang Jiang is thinking of. If it really comes to a precarious situation, I'll step in. Zhang Wuchen said. How could he possibly have risen to his current position if he couldn't even discern the intentions of a young lad? The reason why he chose not to say anything about the matter was because Zhang Xian had simply brought too much shock to them. He wanted to let things run for the moment, so that he could get a clearer gauge of Zhang Xian's abilities and determine a suitable course of action for dealing with that young man. This alright, I understand. Hearing how even the third elder had already granted his implicit approval to the matter, Elder Wuzhen decided not to think too much into the matter anymore. He turned his gaze to Zhang Xian and saw that the young man was in deep contemplation, seemingly trying to figure something out. Inferno Qilin. In this moment, Zhang Xian was standing motionlessly on the spot, gathering every piece of information he had regarding the Saint Beast from the Library of Heaven's Path. The Saint Beast's vicious nature was described within the Beast Tamer books he had browsed through. All it took was putting a few links together for him to deduce Zhang Jiang's ulterior motive. This fellow doesn't possess the dragon bloodline, and the strength it wields is far beyond my ability to deal with either. It really won't be easy for me to tame it. Zhang Xian rubbed in glabella in frustration. To be honest, if he knew that he had to face a Saint Beast of the Inferno Qilin's caliber, he would have never accepted the duel in the first place. While his beast pummeling taming method was indeed formidable, it didn't seem too likely that it would be effective against such a powerful fellow. Would the Inferno Qilin even be willing to allow him to approach it? Given his current strength, it was much more probable for him to be roasted to crisp before he could even get close to it. How was he supposed to tame the Inferno Qilin like that? Roasted to crisp? At this point, Zhang Xian glanced at the fearsome flames burning on the Inferno Qilin and abruptly froze on the spot, as if a sudden epiphany had come to him. Are you ready yet? Can we start now? Seeing how Zhang Xian was frozen on the spot, as if a block of ice after seeing the Inferno Qilin's prowess with his own eyes, a gleeful smirk inconspicuously emerged on Zhang Jiang's lips as he urged impatiently. Sure, let's start. Zhang Xian raised his head and nodded without any hesitation. Open the cage. Seeing how swiftly the young man had replied to him, Zhang Jiang was slightly taken aback. He was expecting the young man to be hesitant from fear. Nevertheless, he soon burst into laughter and nodded. Very well. No matter whether Zhang Xian really had a plan in mind, or it was all false bravado, everything would eventually come crumbling before the superior prowess of the Inferno Qilin. Zhang Jiang waved his hand, and the elder who had brought the metal cage over previously quickly walked forward and pressed his palm against the cage. In an instant, a door appeared on the cage. It wasn't too big nor too small, perfect for a grown man to pass through. Naturally, a Saint Beast of the Inferno Qilin's size wouldn't be able to pass through it. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xian began walking toward the door. Zhang Shi. Jian Qinsheng hurriedly stepped forward to dissuade the young man against participating in this challenge. Its body is able to produce a massive cloud of flames on taming himself and reduce everything. But he did have a clear understanding of what kind of person Xing Sword Saint was. Due to its high aptitude for destruction, was a particularly not even the powerful sage clans dared to always offend wanting easily. To show off at every Recalling turn. The description However, concerning this that Saint fellow Beast, did wield abilities was indeed able to match be perfectly up to his boasting. It and seemed like that fellow was unable to tame the power and resources to trap this massive fellow for 3 years straight to deal with the Zhang clan. To walk in and confront any other such clan, a fearsome Saint whatever artifact that they were using to imprison, it would have been burned down into ashes by now. Zhang Xian turned around and directed a confident nod at Jian Qinsheng. He suddenly felt the surrounding them learn of the greatness of the sanctum of sage's swordsmanship. Upon realizing that there was a foreign intruder, Jian Qinsheng was taken aback by Zhang Xian's reply. Which had been lying lazily on the ground in a fluster and said, suddenly
No,
revealed
that's not
a
what
hint
I
of
mean.
savagery in its eyes.
It was just a moment
and
ago
it began
that he thought
making
the
its
other
way
party
over
was
slowly.
dabbling in too many
Inferno
things.
Chilin,
I
diluting his
believe that you
identity
should
as
be
a
able to
sword
tell that I'm
practitioner
not
of the
from the
Sanctum
Zhang
of
clan.
Sages.
Watching
So he
as the
stepped in to
Inferno
remind the
Chilin
other
made its
party
way
of the
over
matter
threateningly,
previously, but this
Zhang
time,
Xian showed
he
no
was
signs
stopping
of
the other
fear.
party because he was
Instead,
truly
a
worried.
warm smile
A
formed
Saint
on his
beast
lips
of that
as he
caliber
said,
was already
"An
frightening
esteemed like
enough when
Saint beast
motionless.
like you have been imprisoned
If
in a
Zhang
cage
Xian
for
were to
3 long
execute his
years by the
swordsmanship
Zhang
before
clan,
it, stripped
wouldn't
of
he
your
be
honor
killed?
and dignity.
It's fine,
At
it's
this
fine.
point,
I
I
only
only
have
have
a
a
single
single question for
Zhang
you.
Xian
Do you
waved
want
his
to
hand
exact
perfunctorily
vengeance?
before
This
leaping
is the
right into
belief
the
that the
cage.
parent is
Hoo-hoo-hoo.
responsible for
As
disciplining
soon as
their
he stepped
children
into the cage,
and imparting to
it was
them
as
the
if
right
he was
values in
transported
life.
into another
If
world.
they failed to do so,
Waves of searing
and their
heat
children
gushed at
end up
him
committing
relentlessly,
malicious actions,
seemingly
they
vowing
would
to
have
burn
to
him
shoulder
down
the blame
into
for that.
cinders.
The
150
blistering heat
kilometers
accumulated within this cage distorted the space, so
The
much that there
Inferno
was nothing
Chilin
one
finally
could see
halted
that
upon
wasn't
hearing
warped,
those words,
making it hard
Seeing
to
this,
perceive size
Zhang
and
Xian
distance.
chuckled softly
The
as he
Inferno Chilin
continued,
thrives off
just
earth
like
flames.
you. I also hate the Zhang clan with a passion. If you don't want to be trapped and tortured anymore, I can bring you out of here. Together, we'll make a huge uproar in the world. And if you wish, we can even destroy the Zhang clan too. Destroy the Zhang clan? Just what does that fellow intend to do? Upon hearing those words, Zhang Wuchen and Elder Wuzhen felt their hair standing on end, and they nearly fainted on the spot. What in the world are you doing? You're supposed to tame the Inferno Chilin. Why are you bringing the Zhang clan into the equation? Well, a mere Saint 9 Dan beast won't pose much of a threat to our powerful Zhang clan. But still, if it goes on a rampage and relentlessly emanates its flames in the middle of the city, we will be put in a difficult position. More importantly, our reputation would be completely ripped to shreds. With awful looks on their faces, the two elders turned their gazes to Zhang Jiang and saw that the young man's face had already turned pale in fright. Humph! If that fellow really manages to tame the Inferno Chilin and cause a mess in the Zhang clan, I'll hold you responsible for the damage. Zhang Wuchen flung his sleeves coldly and harumphed. But Zhang Jiang wanted to protest. But meeting with the wintry gazes of the two elders, he could only lower his gaze meekly and accept their judgment. I understand. Seeing how the young man before him was speaking such big words, the Inferno Chilin sneered in disdain. Destroy the Zhang clan? Are you sure you have the guts and strength to challenge the #1 sage clan on the Master Teacher continent? If it was one of the minor clans, it could still afford to run rampant for a while. But in here, even it had no choice but to lie low. Putting everything aside, just the man who had captured it and brought it to its current prison had been able to suppress its flames with a flick of his hand. If that man had truly intended to kill it, it would have fallen at a single slash of his. The Zhang clan is indeed powerful, with many experts filling its ranks. However, as a clan of master teachers, it has to obey by the rules. If they truly had no regard for the rules, they would have already tortured you into submission. There is no way you would be able to lie here peacefully and live your days quietly, Zhang Xian said. Humph! The Inferno Chilin turned its head away. It was furious at the Zhang clan's act of imprisoning it, but it had to admit that the Zhang clan had never treated it too poorly. Otherwise, there were many ways they could have forced it into submission, such as completely halting any spiritual energy from getting to it, and depriving it of food and drink. Even though it would not have succumbed to those cheap tricks still, its life could have been made a living hell. And the reason for that was because the Zhang clan was a clan of master teachers. There were rules that they had to obey, or else they would risk losing their prestige and honor that they had built up over the many years. No matter how powerful a clan was, if it paid heed only to the ends and not the means, it would be nothing more than a tyrant. A powerful clan that paid attention to only the ends and not the means would be nothing more than a tyrannical monster. And tyranny could only get one so far. Besides, if the Inferno Chilin did not choose to serve the Zhang clan willingly, it would be a ticking time bomb waiting to explode at any moment. If it acted up while its master was away, perhaps killing a few of the younger offspring secretly, that would cause far greater damage to the Zhang clan. Seeing that the Inferno Chilin was listening to his words, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief as he continued his persuasion. I can bring you out to pummel the person who has landed you in the plight you are in. Not only that, I can even cleanse your bloodline, bringing you to greater heights. Cleanse my bloodline? You! The Inferno Qilin harumphed coldly. A flame cloud immediately rose from its body, and the already blistering heat in the surroundings further intensified. Kaja! Zhang Xian felt a deeply stifling sensation in his chest choking him from within. It felt like he would be reduced to ashes should the wrong words come out from his mouth. Indeed. Do you doubt my words? Despite knowing he was knee-deep in danger, Zhang Xian did not show the slightest hint of nervousness. Instead, a confident smile materialized on his face. I can prove it to you. Prove it to me. The Inferno Qilin frowned. Indeed. I am only a Grand Dominion Realm cultivator, an individual who poses no threat whatsoever to you. Whether I'm lying or not, you should be able to tell with a swift look. Think about how long you have been imprisoned here. Don't you desire to attain more power and make those who have humiliated you pay the price for their actions? Or are you satisfied being treated as a tool for the beast tamers of the Zhang clan to test their skills on you? Are you really fine with allowing the Zhang clan trample all over your dignity? Zhang Xian lifted his gaze to look right into the Inferno Qilin's eyes as he further enticed it with his voice. The opportunity is right before your eyes. It's your choice whether you want to seize it or not. But know that if you were to let it slip, such an opportunity might never come once more. The Inferno Qilin fell into deep contemplation, and confusion could be seen reflected in its eyes. But at this moment, someone amid the crowd shouted, "Agree to his request." It was from Zhang Ziqing. Her shout immediately caught the attention of the crowd, and many gazes fell upon her. Seeing that she was suddenly in the spotlight, Zhang Ziqing widened her eyes in realization at what she had just done, and her face immediately flushed red. At the same time, her hands trembled in shock as she muttered, "Demonic Tunist?" The words that she had just spoken simply escaped from her throat, before she could even notice it. The young man's voice seemed to carry some kind of unique quality to it, that drew her into a confounded state, compelling her to bend to his will. And the fact that the young man was able to pull this off showed that he was not an amateur in demonic tunes, as he had earlier claimed. On the contrary, he was an expert whose mastery in the occupation far surpassed hers. Otherwise, there was no way a demonic tunist prodigy like her would have fallen for his beguilement, and even shouted out such embarrassing words. What was even more unfortunate was that she was the only one who had fallen for his demonic tunes. There were plenty whose cultivation was far lower than hers amid the crowd, but none of them had fallen for his demonic tunes. She knew that this was not due to Zhang Xian acting against her, but rather, her high affinity toward demonic tunes had worked against her. It was precisely due to her sharpness toward music that resulted in her being subconsciously swayed by Zhang Xian's demonic tunes in her moment of carelessness, thus resulting in that embarrassing event. In a sense, this is similar to how skillful musicians were able to hear subtle differences in the melody, where an ordinary man perceived no difference in the tune at all. The young man's demonic tune was directed solely toward the Inferno Qilin, so the effects on others were not too pronounced. It was only due to her innate sensitivity toward music that resulted in her falling for it. To others, there were completely no effects whatsoever. Well, for the time being, that was. As time went by, the others would also slowly find themselves unwittingly sinking into the young man's demonic tune too. After recovering from her shock, Zhang Ziqing gritted her teeth in fury. Humph! Despite possessing such deep capabilities in demonic tunes, he still claims that he's just an amateur in it. His claim that he doesn't know chess is probably a lie too. She had already lost to the young man in the field of painting, and it was apparent that she would be no match for him in terms of zither skills. All that was left was chess, and it was honestly hard for her to believe that the young man before her did not know a thing about chess at all. She would have to make sure to challenge him after he was done taming the Inferno Qilin. Paying no heed to Zhang Ziqing, Zhang Xian continued his persuasion. What's your decision? It's just a try, and it won't cause the slightest damage to you at all. On the contrary, if it succeeds, you will gain the power to escape from this confinement. So why are you still hesitating? Just as Zhang Ziqing had guessed, he was not only using demonic tunes, but also impartation of heaven's will.
With the two abilities stacked on top of one another, further augmented by his celestial master teacher aura and heart of a teacher, as powerful as the Inferno Chilans will might have been, it was already starting to be swayed. After a long moment of contemplative silence, the Inferno Chilan eventually nodded. Very well, I'll just give you one chance. It had been trapped for far too long. It would be for the best if it could achieve a breakthrough and escape. And if this young man dared to lie to it, it did not mind devouring him whole. You are indeed a wise beast. Zhang Xian chuckled softly as he flicked his wrist. A jade bottle materialized in his hand, and shaking it lightly, a pill dropped into his other hand. This pill is able to cleanse your bloodline. Due to the long and slender body frame of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, the scene of it lying flat on the Bridge of Swords somehow bore a striking resemblance to a skewered sausage. Good. Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. With a wave of his hand, he formed numerous threads of Jinqi to secure the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast in place, ensuring that it wouldn't fall from the Bridge of Swords. After which, he turned to the Inferno Chilan and said, "This medicine of mine is particularly difficult to assimilate. I'll require your Chilan flames as a medium in order to fully break down the contents of the pill. Since you don't trust me, why don't you allow me to prove you wrong by lending me your flames?" Even though the Inferno Chilan appeared as if it was sleeping, it was actually sneaking curious glances over to see what the young man was up to, succumbing to its intrigue to find out what would happen to the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. It eventually gave a nod of agreement. While it dared not to casually eat the young man's pills, lending the latter its flames wasn't much of a deal. And if the pill really harnessed the miraculous effects of allowing it to achieve a breakthrough, perhaps it might not be that bad of an idea to ally with the young man. After giving a nod of agreement, the Inferno Chilan opened its mouth, and crimson flames burst forth from it. In the blink of an eye, its flames had already swept across the entire cage. This side. Direct it straight toward the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast. Zhang Xian instructed. Tzizi. Those flames were at a temperature which warped even the surroundings out of shape. As soon as they fell on the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's back, a resounding sizzle echoed in the air. At the same time, Zhang Xian also began to rotate the sword, as if barbecuing a meat skewer. Outside the cage, Zhang Wuchen and the others glanced at one another with stupefied looks on their faces. Even the genius beast tamer, Zhang Jiang, wasn't able to make sense of the situation at all. It was apparent to everyone that the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was Zhang Xian's tamed beast. As a mere Grand Dominion Realm Pinnacle cultivator, that fellow really should be counting his blessing for being able to tame a dimension-sundering Realm Pinnacle Saint Beast. So why was he roasting it right now then? The flames of the Inferno Chilan was more intense than the hottest earth flames. Even Saint high-tier artifacts would melt swiftly under its searing heat. No matter how powerful the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was, there was no way it would be able to survive for too long when exposed to such overwhelming heat. At this rate, it might just really die. Is this what he means by displaying his swordsmanship? Jian Qingqing muttered in utter disbelief. It was just a moment ago that the young man said that he would bring glory to the sanctum of sage's swordsmanship. So Jian Qingqing simply assumed that the young man was going to use his sword to clash with the Inferno Chilan face-on. Yet, it turned out that he was only using it as a skewer stick for his tamed beast, so as to give it a good roasting. Can you get any more misleading than that? Tzizi. Under the blazing heat, oil began to seep out on the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's skin, and a peculiarly appetizing meat aroma wafted in the air. Master, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast was beginning to reach its limits. It tried to thrash its body around, but the Jinqi threads had bound it in a way that prevented it from effectively exerting its strength, thus rendering its efforts futile. Seeing that its life was hanging by a thread, despair surfaced in the depths of its eyes. Grit your teeth and endure it. If you wish to make a breakthrough, this is pain that you must overcome. Zhang Xian sent a telepathic message over. Netherworld Azure Dragon Beasts harness the coldness of the Netherworld in their bodies. Thus their cultivation,
are also leaning toward the cold attribute too. While the Qilin flames are at odds with your primary attribute, it can help to neutralize any blockages in your meridians and cleanse your bloodline, allowing you to push right for a breakthrough. The pill which Zhang Xian took out previously was infused with his Heaven's Path Zhenqi, so naturally, it had the effect of cleansing bloodlines too. Unfortunately, its effectiveness was extremely limited on the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, whose cultivation was much higher than him. In other words, from the very start, his promise of allowing the Inferno Qilin to achieve a breakthrough just by eating the golden pill had been a big fat lie. His true purpose was to make use of the intense heat of the Qilin flames to refine the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's bloodline and grant it the momentum to overcome its Saint 8 Dan pinnacle bottleneck. I understand. Realizing that its master was doing all of this for it, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast gritted its teeth tenaciously and endured the excruciating pain. When the flames dived into its body, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast felt the blood coursing through its body bubbling furiously, threatening to evaporate dry at any moment. A feeling of frailty gradually rippled through its body, and its consciousness was beginning to slip away from it. Just when it was on the verge of caving in, the pill that it had swallowed previously suddenly released a burst of soothing energy, which maneuvered the flames in its body to knock open all of the bottlenecks within its body. As a result of that, its turbid blood began to turn clearer as well. It's working. The eyes of the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast twinkled in excitement. Even though it had absolute trust in its master, relief and exhilaration still gushed in upon seeing the changes occurring within its body. From the looks of it, it should be able to achieve a breakthrough very soon. Thus, it gathered all of its grit and forced itself to persevere on. Eventually, its suffering paid off. 3 minutes later, it felt the invisible ceiling that had capped its cultivation at Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle was beginning to loosen, and cracks were gradually creeping all over it. Now, all of a sudden, its master's voice echoed loudly in its ear. Without any hesitation, it gathered all of its remaining energy together as it released a majestic roar. Boom! Even the sturdy metal cage rattled under the deafening roar. Kacha! Kacha! The power that the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast harnessed within its body began to surge to a new peak, and eventually, as if its body couldn't contain that power anymore, a tremendous burst of energy shot upward into the clouds. It managed to pull off a breakthrough. The golden pill could actually allow one to achieve a breakthrough? Retracting its flames, the Inferno Qilin couldn't help but freeze on the spot. It was still deeply skeptical when the young man said that the golden pill would allow it to achieve a breakthrough within 10 minutes. But from the looks of it now, it was apparent that the young man wasn't lying. The golden pill was truly a miraculous pill. It hurriedly turned its gaze over to the young man, only to see that the latter completely preoccupied with controlling the 100 of swords he had brought out. The jade bottle that he had taken the golden pill out from previously was currently placed on the ground, not too far away from the young man, open for anyone to take. Hee, it's all mine. A glint flashed across the Inferno Qilin's eyes as it flicked its paw. Who? In the blink of an eye, the jade bottle was already in its grasp. Taking a look inside, he saw that there were 7 golden pills inside. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, it swallowed all of them down. Let me tell you this, I have already assimilated those pills into my body. Even if the young man felt indignant at having his pills eaten by it, surely it didn't have to come up with such a ludicrous lie. It had made sure to scan the pill carefully with its spiritual perception prior to consuming it, and it was certain that those 7 golden pills were identical to the one the young man had offered it previously. If they were really poison, his tamed beast should have been dead by now. And besides, who in the world would place a pill intended for achieving breakthroughs into a bottle filled with poisonous pills? What if one were to consume the poison by accident? At least put some effort into crafting out your lie. I can't feel your sincerity at all. Hearing those words, the young man's face immediately turned white, and he lowered his gaze despondently as he muttered, "You have already assimilated the pills? Oh no, this is a disaster. Enough of your act. Get out of here right now, and I'll spare. Fed up with the young man's theatrics, the Inferno Qilin harumphed coldly and turned its body around. But halfway through its motion, it suddenly froze up entirely, and an intense pain abruptly exploded through its innards. Kacha! Kacha! It was a kind of sensation that felt as if someone was tugging desperately at the two ends of its heart in opposite directions, attempting to rip it apart. At the same time, the Inferno Qilin felt a flowing current of power, seeping into the thinnest meridians in his body and gnawing at his nerves viciously, causing an unending wave of pain to assault his senses. Facing such a situation, the Inferno Qilin panicked. Qilin flames were capable of turning anything to cinders. As such, most poisons would be reduced to ashes before they could do any harm to its body. So why would its body suddenly be tormented by great pain all of a sudden? Teases. While it was still deep in thought, the pain assaulting him from the inside swiftly intensified, sweeping through every nook and cranny of his body like an unstoppable flood. Pada! The Inferno Qilin collapsed weakly to the ground, devoid of even the strength to get back to its feet. It's definitely the golden pills that I have just eaten. Damn it! The Inferno Qilin cursed with his clattering teeth. It was very certain that the cause of the pain was the golden pills that it had just eaten. When it was assimilating the pills earlier, several surges of energy burst forth from them and converged together before diving into the narrowest meridians in its body to lie in wait. Why you poison me? The Inferno Qilin glared at the young man before it in fury. Everything was as clear as day to it now. The young man had intentionally placed the jade bottle on the ground in order to prompt it to steal it from him. By doing this, not only would he not be infringing on his dignity as a master teacher, he would be able to corner it too. More importantly, it wouldn't have anyone to blame, because it was due to its own foolishness that it leaped ahead of itself and snatched the pills indeed. There was nothing more frightening than a shameless master teacher. You should have just asked me instead of leaping forward to snatch it. Why are you so reckless? Those pills are poisonous, you know. Zhang Xian exclaimed with a hint of helplessness in his voice. Trembling with fury, the Inferno Qilin found itself at a loss for words. What else could it say? All the young man did was to place the jade bottle beside it. In the first place, the young man had offered the golden pill to him at one point in time, and it refused it. After which, it was also the one who snatched away the jade bottle and downed its content from the perspective of the outsiders. The young man hadn't done anything morally questionable at all from the start to the end. Directing a vicious glare at Zhang Xian, the Inferno Qilin growled, "Give me the antidote." Since the young man had such a poison in his possession, it didn't make sense for him to not have the antidote. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't have any antidote for that poison. However, I do know of a method to alleviate the effects of the poison. As long as you submit to me, I can help you, Zhang Xian said with a look of difficulty. You want me to submit to you? Dream on. After despicably luring it into eating the poison, that fellow still wanted it to submit to him? The Inferno Qilin nearly exploded on the spot. Malicious killing intent burst forth from it as it roared ferociously. Even if I were to die today, I shall bring you down together with me. Boom! The Inferno Qilin leaped into the air, and it swiped its hoof down on Zhang Xian. In an instant, flames surged to every corner of the cage, and an overwhelming burst of energy, which was powerful enough to even rip pitch-black rifts in space, tore through the air, descending down upon the young man. Pada! But before the attack could reach, the Inferno Qilin suddenly plummeted from the sky, crashing heavily onto the ground. Its body convulsed ceaselessly from the excruciating pain coursing through its innards, and white foam was leaking out from the corner of its mouth. The poison was simply too potent that it had exceeded its tolerance limit. Zhang Xian walked up to the Inferno Qilin and gazed down on the latter impassively. He shook his head and persuaded, "Submit to me. You'll only die at this rate. You want someone who possesses the ancient Qilin bloodline, like me, to submit to a filthy and despicable human like you? Dream on." The Inferno Qilin roared with gritted teeth. The lineage of the Qilin tribe could be traced back to the ancient times, and the Qilin tribe had been a dominant power, even in the era
where powerful beasts roamed the surface of the master-teacher continent. While the purity of its bloodline was lacking as compared to its ancestors, there was no way its pride would allow it to submit to a mere human. It would rather die than to submit to them. Otherwise, the Zhang clan wouldn't have been completely helpless despite having captured it for 3 whole years. I guess there's no choice then. Zhang Xian shook his head. He was just about to further goad the Inferno Qilin on with his words, when an oppressive pressure suddenly weighed down heavily on him from above. In an instant, even his breathing had become laborious. Raising his head, he saw dark, ominous clouds swiftly filling the previously clear sky. Lightning crackled angrily from within, as if heralding the arrival of a catastrophe. Is this the Saint Nine Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy ordeal? Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in astonishment. Saint Nine Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy Realm. Macrocosm refers to the entire spatial world we perceive formed by the 3 dimensions. Those who had reached this realm would be able to wield an understanding of space far greater than at dimension-sundering realm, allowing them to dictate the changes in the spaces around them, granting them the strength required to stand at the very peak of the master-teacher continent. Zhang Xian thought that it would be a huge blessing if he could help the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast rise to half Macrocosm Ascendancy realm, but perhaps due to the firm foundation it had built up over many years, it was actually able to crash down 2 bottlenecks in rapid succession using the Qilin flames, charging up to Saint Nine Dan in a single breath. The ability to dictate space was a skill that should be unique only to the heavens themselves. Those who sought to steal this ability from them would have to suffer an equivalent punishment for their actions. As such, the ordeal that one had to face at this level was exceptionally formidable. If dimension-sundering ordeal was difficult, the Macrocosm Ascendancy ordeal would be despair-inducing. To make a comparison, even the might of 10-dimension-sundering ordeal wouldn't come close to matching up to the Macrocosm Ascendancy ordeal. Slala, in barely the blink of an eye, the ominous clouds in the sky had already covered an area of 4,000 to 5,000 mu around them, and it was still expanding at a frightening rate. This is really a disaster. Outside the cage, Zhang Wuqian and Elder Wuzhen were trembling in horror. The both of them had been through the Macrocosm Ascendancy ordeal themselves, and even with their current cultivation realms, they would still shudder at the notion of facing it once more. One must know that the prowess of the ordeal was, in fact, comparable to a full-strength attack by an expert surpassing Saint Nine Dan. And for such a powerful lightning tribulation to be called in the middle of their city, the entire guest area could very well be reduced to cinders. That young man had already destroyed countless buildings near the entrance formation previously, and now, he was going to destroy their guest accommodations as well? That Zhang Xian was really a symbol of misfortune. How were they to explain this to their clan head when he returned? Everyone, hurry up and evacuate this area. Knowing that the crowd standing within the perimeter of the lightning tribulation would only induce it to grow stronger and stronger, Zhang Wuqian immediately instructed. So. Realizing the dangers, the crowd also didn't dare to linger in the area. They hurriedly flitted as far away from the guest area as they could. There was no way to stop the lightning tribulation. It would only grow stronger the more they tried to curb it. It was one thing if they succeeded in eliminating the lightning tribulation once and for all. But if they were to fail, the entire city could very well be reduced to ashes. That Zhang Xian is really a herald of misfortune. He should have known better than to allow his saint beast to achieve a breakthrough here. Zhang Wuqian spat through gritted teeth. Whenever the Zhang clan had anyone who was on the verge of making a breakthrough to Macrocosm Ascendancy realm, they would make sure to prepare a location for him in advance, and in some cases, set up formations even in order to ensure that the Macrocosm Ascendancy ordeal wouldn't cause too much damage to the surroundings. Yet this fellow actually brought one right into the middle of their home base. Considering how many guests there were here, there was no way they would be able to protect all of them. If any of them were to lose their life while under the Zhang clan's care, it would really be a huge smirch on the Zhang clan's reputation. Taking a step back, even if no life was lost in this catastrophe,
The massive damage that it would sustain as a result of the macrocosm ascendancy ordeal would still make it a laughingstock on the master-teacher continent. Zhang Xian, hurry up and bring your tamed beast out of here. There's a Dracatiger mountain, not too far away, with specialized formations that could help your tamed beast deal with the lightning tribulation. Unable to take it any longer, Zhang Wuchen urged anxiously. At the very end of the city was a place known as the Dracatiger Mountain. It was used by the Zhang clan as a specialized ground for their offspring to deal with their cultivation ordeals. For this purpose, there were plenty of formidable formations set up around the area, and while it wouldn't help to fend off the lightning, it would at least suppress the growth of inner demons within the cultivator's mind, thus allowing him to focus his full attention on coping with the lightning tribulation. As long as he could get the Saint Beast there, the Zhang clan would be able to avert this crisis. Very well. Zhang Xian shot a glance at the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast before nodding his head. But just as he was about to instruct the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to head over to the place which Zhang Wuchen had spoken of, a powerful surge of might suddenly burst forth from behind him, following which, the Inferno Chilan's furious bellow sounded in the air. Since I'm going to die anyway, I might as well bring down all of you bastards along with me. Flames began emanating from the Inferno Chilan's body. This is really bad. Zhang Wuchen was horrified to see this sight. Due to being plagued with lethal poison, the Inferno Chilan had already resolved itself for death. As such, it had chosen to use its full strength to further provoke the lightning tribulation, so as to bring down the darn Zhang Xian and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast together with it. As it was standing at the very center of the lightning tribulation, the instant that it drove its strength, the lightning tribulation was immediately rumbled furiously in response to its provocation. Whoa! In the blink of an eye, the 5,000 mu field expanded to cover over 10,000 mu, and there were no signs that its growth was going to stop anytime soon either. If the lightning tribulation had only covered the guest area previously, at this moment, it was covering a huge chunk of the area where the Zhang clan's offspring resided in too. You well done. Seeing how cooperative the Inferno Chilan was at such a crucial moment, even without having him to prompt for it, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in delight. Given the size of the lightning tribulation, it should be comparable to at least 10 pinnacle spirit stones at the very least. If he could devour it, his cultivation would definitely surge to higher realms. Ha ha ha, I want all of you to suffer along with me. Completely oblivious to Zhang Xian's thoughts, the Inferno Chilan was only focused on a single matter this very instant, making the lightning tribulation grow as large as possible. Roaring furiously, it released every last bit of energy it had within it. In the midst of doing so, it realized that the release of its strength seemed to lessen the excruciating pain from the poison. So it gritted its teeth and pushed itself on. Kacha! Kacha! Even before the lightning could fall, the overwhelming pressure it emanated had already destroyed the formation cast on the cage. At the same time, countless buildings also caved into the pressure and collapsed abruptly. Master, what should I do? Seeing how his macrocosm ascendancy ordeal had gone completely out of control, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast couldn't help but cower back in fear. It had been too focused on pushing for a breakthrough that it overlooked the possible consequences of his action. It had never thought that things would get to this point. If even its master was helpless before this situation, it would really be electrocuted to death. There's no need to panic. Continue drawing in the lightning tribulation. The larger it is, the better it'll be. Zhang Xian instructed before flying over to Zhang Wuchen and the other side. Third Elder, Seventh Elder. Zhang Xian clasped his fist and greeted. With his current cultivation realm, he could walk around freely without catching the attention of the lightning tribulation. Do you have any ways to resolve this situation? Zhang Wuchen asked grimly. If the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast didn't leave right now, everyone would be doomed once the lightning tribulation fell. I do have an idea in mind, but I would require a few things to carry them out. Do you happen to have Saint 7 Dan Phantasmal Space Realm, Saint 8 Dan Dimension Sundering, and Saint 9 Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy Realm Cultivation Technique manuals? I need as many of them as possible. Zhang Xian asked urgently. Since the lightning tribulation was already prepared for his consumption, it went without saying that he needed to have the cultivation techniques required to up his cultivation too. Otherwise, he would be wasting this precious source of energy. Cultivation technique manuals? What do you need those for? Zhang Wuchen was taken aback by Zhang Xian's abrupt request. The matters that had occurred at the Sanctum of Sages had been classified as confidential, and students had been sternly warned not to let this matter out. Of course, it would only be a matter of time before it spread amongst the top brass of the major clans. But for the time being, Zhang Wuchen was still unable to fathom the notion of the young man making use of the lightning tribulation to push for breakthroughs. There's no time to explain it to you. I need you to bring them to me right now. This is the only way we can resolve the crisis standing before us. Or else I'm afraid that there would be nothing I could do either. Zhang Xian said with even greater urgency in his voice. I do have a few phantasmal space realm cultivation technique manuals with me at the moment. I was planning to impart them to my students, so I have been bringing them along with me. As for dimension sundering realm cultivation technique manuals, almost all of them are all locked in the clan's book vault. And I'm afraid that even with my authorization as the third elder, I still can't bring you in. Only those amongst the top brass of the Zhang clan are authorized to access it. And even so, they could only pick out a single cultivation technique from there. Even I am no exception to the rule. Zhang Wuchen paused for a moment before eventually replying. Those who had reached Dimension Sundering Realm could already be considered as individuals who had reached the apex of the Master-Teacher continent. As such, despite being the third elder of the Zhang clan, he only had several of them in his private collection. And as for the clan's secret art, it went without saying that there was no way he would be able to show them to an outsider. I guess I would have to make do with Phantasmal Space Realm Cultivation Technique manuals then. Seeing that the lightning was about to fall at any moment, Zhang Xian knew that he didn't have much time to waste. Thus he waved his hand and urged, "Hurry up and take them out. I just have to take a swift glance at them." Seeing that the young man had an idea in mind, Zhang Wuchen didn't dare to waste any time. Flicking his wrist, a bunch of books appeared before him. 5,000 mu is equivalent to 333 m carat 2. 5,000 mu is equivalent to 6,666,666 m squared. There weren't too many books amidst that pile, numbering just roughly 20 to 30 of them. After scanning through them, a deep frown surfaced on Zhang Xian's forehead. They were all relating to Saint Seven Dan Phantasmal Space Realm, but those books were not something which Zhang Xian would even call cultivation technique manuals. If he really had to give a name to it, they were more like assignment booklets. Written on those books were what that appeared similar to assignment questions which teachers would pass down to their students in his previous life. All in all, there was only a single book that could be said to be useful. Zhang Xian shot a deep look at Zhang Wuchen. It's against the rules to impart the Zhang clan's cultivation techniques to outsiders, so I can only show you these. Nevertheless, it's still quite a formidable cultivation technique, suited for cultivators of any attribute to practice. Noting Zhang Xian's gaze on him, Zhang Wuchen explained with an awkward chuckle. Zhang Xian was rendered speechless. Unlike in academies, the cultivation techniques that were passed down in clans were limited in variety. As all members of the Zhang clan shared the same bloodline, they were likely to be similar in terms of attribute, and could cultivate the same cultivation technique. At the same time, honorary elders who chose to ally with the Zhang clan were likely to already have their own cultivation techniques and lineage as well. As such, despite the Zhang clan's influence and standing in the Master-Teacher continent, its collection of cultivation technique manuals was actually not too big. If that's the case, do you have any physical body cultivation technique or soul cultivation technique? Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment before asking. The massive lightning tribulation was like a big feast to him. He might just regret it for life if he couldn't make good use of this opportunity to push for a breakthrough or two. I do have quite a few physical body cultivation techniques here. Elder Wuxian flicked his wrist, and a pile of books numbering over 1,000 appeared right before him. I also have a few soul cultivation technique manuals with me, Zhang Wuqian said as he took out a pile of books too. As they weren't confidential secrets arts of the Zhang clan, there was no problem with him showing these books to Zhang Xian. Seeing that these two fellows were finally reliable for once, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He swiftly shot a glance at those books and collected them into the library of Heaven's Path. All right, I'll go and fend off the lightning tribulation. Saying those words, Zhang Xian leaped up and soared right into the midst of the storm clouds. What? He's going to fend off the lightning tribulation? This? Zhang Wuqian and Elder Wuxian were visibly shocked by Zhang Xian's abrupt actions. Even Zhang Ziqing's face had turned pale in horror. They thought that the young man would have a good solution to deal with the lightning tribulation, but he ended up dashing over blindly instead. Wasn't that as good as courting death? Voila! Zhang Xian dashed right into the dark clouds. At the same time, he swiftly compiled the physical body cultivation technique manuals and soul cultivation technique manuals he had gathered into a higher tier Heaven's Path Golden Body and the Grand Dominion Realm Heaven's Path Soul Art. I probably won't be able to finish absorbing a lightning tribulation of this size, and if it were to really fall, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast would lose its life. Alright, you lot, come out as well. Looking at the storm clouds which extended past the horizon, Zhang Xian knew that no matter how huge an appetite he had, it would be impossible for him to devour it clean within a short period of time. Thus he chose to bring out his clone, the Dongshu gourd, and the vine out too. What a splendid lightning tribulation this is! Looking at the sheer scale of the storm clouds that had congregated in the area, and feeling the immense lightning energy harnessed amidst it, his clone, the Dongshu gourd, and the vine couldn't help but release an excited shriek as they dashed right in. Zhang Xian didn't slack around either. He drew out of his primordial spirit and began furiously devouring in the lightning energy around him. At the same time, under the effects of the mind of void, his body also began drawing in the lightning energy and cultivating the Heaven's Path Golden Body instinctively too. Sometime later, as per the norm with previous lightning tribulations, it fled in fear after realizing that there were several mysterious powers robbing its energy. Zhang Xian swiftly kept his clone, the Dongshu gourd, and the vine back into his storage ring before heaving a sigh of relief. He assessed his gains during this period of time, and he couldn't help but nod in contentment. His soul cultivation had successfully reached Grand Dominion Realm Pinnacle. At the same time, his physical body had also surpassed its previous bottleneck, reaching a level comparable to half-Saint Pinnacle artifacts. With the current resilience of his physical body, even if he were to stand completely unguarded before a Saint 7 Dan cultivator, the latter would still be unable to harm him in the slightest. In the truest sense, he could be said to be a human-shaped weapon. And that wasn't the happiest news yet. It seems like the innate fetal poison has been further suppressed as a result of my breakthrough. He realized that the more lightning energy he absorbed, the more he was able to suppress the innate fetal poison. After digging into the macrocosm ascendancy ordeal, it had been forced to cower quietly by a corner, not daring to move in the slightest. If a saint beast could submit to a man like that even after all that had happened, there would really be no need for beast tamers in the world. Everyone would have just become a poison master instead. Just like humans, saint beasts had their own pride too. They would only submit to people whom they recognize. And naturally, for a person like Zhang Xian, who resorted to underhanded means such as poisons and schemes, only someone with a loose screw would be willing to acknowledge such a person as their master. This was especially so for a fiery-tempered saint beast like the Inferno Qilin. Using underhanded means against it would only intensify its hostility, making it nigh impossible to tame it. Hearing the conversation between the two, Zhang Xian couldn't help but scratch his head in embarrassment. He thought that he could win the Inferno Qilin's respect by having the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast achieve a breakthrough before it, thus convincing it submit to him. However, Just by looking at how the Inferno Qilin didn't hesitate to provoke the lightning tribulation just to deal with him, most likely, it would be impossible for him to tame it anymore. Forget it, I admit. Shaking his head, Zhang Xian was just about to admit his defeat when he suddenly felt a slight warmth on his leg. Turning his head over, he saw the Inferno Qilin lying right next to him, licking him with its tongue. With a face filled with respect and awe, it pleaded, "Master, please take me in." Ah! Zhang Zhang's body froze upon hearing those words. Zhang Wuchen and the others also stared at one another blankly. What was wrong with this fellow? It was just a moment ago that it declared impassionately that those of the ancient Qilin bloodline weren't to be sullied. And if it could, it would have probably slaughtered Zhang Xian without any hesitation. Yet, why would it suddenly cast away its pride and end up kneeling on the floor subserviently all of a sudden? Zhang Xian was also clearly taken aback by the abrupt change in attitude by the Inferno Qilin too. He had to stare intently at the Inferno Qilin for a long while before he was able to convince himself that it was the same arrogant beast that he had dealt with just a moment ago. With a bizarre look on his face, he asked, "Are you certain that you want to acknowledge me as your master?" "Yes, I swear on my ancient Qilin bloodline that I'll heed any commands that master instructs me without any complaints." The Inferno Qilin anxiously nodded its head, as if fearing that the young man before it would change his mind. "All right then." Zhang Xian nodded. A mere instant after giving his 2 words of approval, he immediately saw a droplet of blood harnessing the Inferno Qilin's soul diving gently into his glabella. And with their master-servant relationship being sealed by a soul contract, he swiftly became cognizant of the massive fellow's thought process. Under normal circumstances, the Inferno Qilin would have never submitted to anyone. However, when it saw him diving into a lightning tribulation so powerful that even it would have fled in fear, it changed its mind. While saint beasts were born physical constitutions that were far stronger than humans, their primordial spirits were much weaker in contrast. As such, they possessed natural deference toward lightning, and those who were able to conquer lightning were not too much different from deities in their eyes. As such, just on the basis that the young man was able to chase it away the lightning tribulation so easily, it didn't seem too bad of an idea to become his tamed beast. Furthermore, since the other party was able to help the Netherworld Azure Dragon beast achieve a breakthrough, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to do the same for it too. The thought process of beasts was sometimes just much simpler than humans. It was not to say that they were less intelligent, but the way that they perceive friends and foes was much more straightforward as compared to humans. "I don't believe it. How can this be?" Seeing that the Inferno Qilin had actually acknowledged Zhang Xian as its master, Zhang Zhang's face turned as white as a sheet of paper. That was a saint beast which even their clan head was unable to tame. Yet, to be able to win its loyalty within just a short 20 minutes, not to mention, it was just a moment ago that the Inferno Qilin was baring its fangs at Zhang Xian, dying to rip the young man into shreds. Why would it suddenly change its attitude all of a sudden? "Do you know that your abrupt change in attitude has put me in a spot? Not only have I lost the duel, the clan head would also punish me severely for this once he returned. He had to pay a heavy price in order to capture that huge fellow. If he were to learn that it had fallen into the hands of an outsider Pooh." Zhang Zhang's face reddened from all of the frustration bottled up within, and a spurt of blood escaped from his lips. "You are an Inferno Qilin, a beast who possesses the noble ancient Qilin bloodline." Zhang Zhang couldn't help but exclaim in agitation. "So what if the noble ancient Qilin bloodline flows through my veins? Zhang Shi is an outstanding young talent who's both righteous and humble. Such a person is worthy of me devoting my entire life into pursuing." The Inferno Qilin shot a haughty look toward Zhang Jiang, fully expressing its delight in becoming Zhang Xian's tamed beast. "You!" Zhang Jiang nearly collapsed to the ground. "What happened to your pride? What happened to your dignity? It wasn't too long ago that you were screeching impassionately about how you would rather die than to submit yourself up to another and be sullied. And all of a sudden, you are acting in such a manner. It can't be that your soul has been swapped with another person's, can it?" Since you have acknowledged me as your master, then I guess it would be inappropriate for me not to bestow you with a greeting gift, right? Completely ignoring the blood-spurting Zhang Jiang, Zhang Xian snapped his finger with a slight smile. With an expectant look, the Inferno Qilin waited excitedly for its master present when all of a sudden, it felt a surge of energy gushing out from the depths of its dantian. Under the surge of energy, it found its meridians, which were previously riddled with blockages here and there, were being swiftly knocked open. This is the lethal poison from before? The Inferno Qilin widened its eyes in disbelief. The sensation of the energy coursing through its body was very familiar. It was the exact same feeling it felt when the poison in the pills diffused throughout its entire body. Just that, instead of wreaking havoc this time around, this surge of energy was clearing away all of the bottlenecks limiting its cultivation, thus pushing it toward a higher realm. To turn a lethal poison into a tonic with just a mere thought, this was a feat which even 9-star master teachers were incapable of. The Inferno Qilin found itself trembling uncontrollably in agitation. It was at this very moment that it truly realized how wise of a decision that it had just made. It was an instinctive action that it chose to acknowledge the young man as its master. But who could have thought that the capabilities the young man wielded would be far beyond its imagination? Possessing the ancient Qilin bloodline, it was blessed with superior prowess at birth, putting it at a much higher starting point at the others. But at the same time, this overwhelming strength had become its limitation too. Without a doubt, the Qilin Flames was the strongest weapon that it wielded, but it was also precisely how powerful it was that it was hard to bring it under control, thus making it nigh impossible for Inferno Qilin to cultivate the smaller and thinner meridians in its body. As a result, its rate of cultivation had been very slow. However, in this very moment, that surge of energy was helping it to pave open all of these smaller and thinner meridians, thus clearing all of the bottlenecks in its way. In an instant, the Inferno Qilin felt that the invisible ceiling capping its cultivation was starting to loosen up, and it would be able to push for a breakthrough at any moment. Master, hurry up and make a breakthrough. Don't waste this precious opportunity, Zhang Xian interjected nonchalantly. Yes, knowing that this wasn't the time for soppy words, the Inferno Qilin closed its eyes and drove the energy in its body. Boom! A powerful pressure swept across surroundings, and in this instant, the Inferno Qilin appeared to be an indomitable conqueror. The Inferno Qilin is going to make a breakthrough too? Zhang Wuqian's face immediately warped in absolute shock. With a tearful look he exclaimed, Zhang Shi, please take the Inferno Qilin away from here. The Zhang clan can't take another lightning tribulation. On behalf of Zhang Jiang, I'll formally concede defeat to you, alright? Just the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's breakthrough was sufficient to turn the entire guest area into ruins. If the more powerful Inferno Qilin were to make a breakthrough too, the entire Dracatiger city could very well be turned into ruins. There's no need to worry. It's currently at St. Nine Dan advanced stage, so it won't draw in any lightning tribulation, Zhang Xian explained awkwardly. Through the soul contract, he was able to accurately perceive the Inferno Qilin's currently cultivation realm and strength. St. Nine Dan Macrocosm Ascendancy Realm Advanced Stage. Even when utilizing the momentum granted by his Xinqi, it would only be able to push for a breakthrough to St. Nine Dan Pinnacle at most. And based on what he knew, just like with St. 8 Dan, there was no lightning tribulation between each cultivation stage within St. 9 Dan. That would be for the best. Zhang Wuqian suddenly recalled that the Inferno Qilin's current cultivation realm, and heaved a sigh of relief. Once bitten, twice shy. Perhaps it was due to the fright from seeing what happened with the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast, that he became particularly sensitive to this issue. Indeed, a breakthrough of a cultivation stage within St. Nine Dan wouldn't draw in any lightning tribulation. As Zhang Wuqian finally calmed down, many questions began floating in his mind. So with a slightly intrigued voice he asked, even a breakthrough of a cultivation stage within St. Nine Dan is as difficult as attempting to scale the heavens, if I may just ask. How did Zhang Shi manage to induce a breakthrough in it? The Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast's breakthrough could still be attributed to the strong foundations it had built up prior to its breakthrough and Zhang Xian's deep understanding of it, but considering that he had just tamed the Inferno Qilin and hadn't had a chance to understand its constitution on a deeper level yet, how in the world did he manage to induce a breakthrough within it too then? If that young man really wielded the ability to induce breakthroughs in Saint Beast as, and when he liked, he could pretty much tame any Saint Beast that he wanted. This I guess it can all be attributed to luck. The Inferno Qilin happens to have made sufficient accumulation over the years, so by using some special means, I was able to tap into its potential and help it push for a breakthrough. Things wouldn't have proceeded as smoothly as this if I had been dealing with another Saint Beast instead, Zhang Xian explained. There was no way he could reveal the existence of the Heaven's Path Zhenqi, or else it could bring him great trouble in the future. Ultimately, everything still boiled down to low profile and humility. Those were the two greatest virtues in the world, after all. Pardon me. It seems like I have lacked consideration in my words. Seeing how the young man was beating around the bush, Zhang Wuchen realized that his actions may appear as if he was probing into the other party's secrets, so he hurriedly apologized. Following which he clasped his fist and smiled. I have heard news from our younglings in the Sanctum of Sages that your teacher is Yang Shi, Yang Xian. Is that true? My teacher is indeed Yang Xian, Zhang Xian replied. At this moment, he wasn't ready to throw out his identity as Yang Xian's student yet. Considering the abilities that he wielded despite his low cultivation realm, there was no telling that greedy individuals would attempt to do him harm, so as to uncover his secrets. Huiwei wasn't around anyway, and they weren't at the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters either. Even the Sanctum of Sages was unable to uncover the authenticity of his identity, so surely it wouldn't be too difficult to fool the Zhang clan too? No wonder. Zhang Wuchen nodded in realization. May I know if Zhang Shi knows where Yang Shi is currently at? My teacher has always been a free man, wandering the lands without allowing himself to be restrained by anything. As such, I'm afraid that I am unaware of his whereabouts either. Zhang Xian replied. Zhang Wuchen was slightly taken aback for a moment before finally understanding why Zhang Xian had come to the Zhang clan, and yet, instead of paying a visit to his teacher, chose to wreak havoc here. It turned out that he was unaware that his teacher was right in the Zhang clan. It's truly a work of coincidence that you came at this timing. Yang Shi is currently in seclusion in the Zhang clan, and I believe that he could be coming out very soon. The two of you will soon be able to reunite with one another. Zhang Wuchen said with a smile. Yang Shi is here too? Zhang Xian asked with a surprised smile on his face, but on the inside, his blood had already run cold. And not only so, he was even a Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, one of the strongest experts in the world. All along, he had been openly using Yang Shi's name in order to conceal the existence of his Library of Heaven's Path. Yet, who could have thought that by some mysterious workings of the world, a character whom he had created at a whim turned out to be truly existent, and not only so, he was even a Grand Elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, one of the strongest experts in the world. It was already extremely awkward for him to be faking as the other party's student. But who could have thought that the other party would even be in the Zhang clan? If the both of them were to meet, wouldn't his fake identity be exposed on the spot? Before Zhang Xian could say a word, Zhang Wuchen had already asked with a frown, Yang Shi? Ah, look at what I'm saying. It's been too long that I have last met teacher, that I accidentally addressed him wrongly by mistake. Zhang Xian hurriedly glossed over his mistake. He had been too overwhelmed with shock that he unintentionally addressed Yang Xian as Yang Shi instead of teacher. Yang Shi has been in seclusion at our Zhang clan for more than a half a year now, so it's indeed been quite some time since the two of you met. Zhang Wuchen nodded in agreement, seemingly accepting Zhang Xian's excuse. Would it be inconveniencing my teacher if I were to visit him while he's in the midst of his seclusion? Zhang Xian looked at Zhang Wuchen and asked. Considering how Zhang Wuchen knew that he was Yang Shi's student, and that given the fact that Yang Shi was currently in the Zhang clan, it was weird that no one had called Yang Shi over yet. There could only be two possibilities for this.
Firstly, Zhang Wuchen was trying to sound him out. Secondly, Yang Shi was in the midst of a crucial point of his cultivation and was unable to leave his seclusion just yet. Regardless of which of the two it was, they worked out to Zhang Xian's advantage. Yang Shi did instruct us not to allow anyone to interrupt him while he's in his cultivation. However, he should be coming out in a few days' time. If Zhang Shi is in no rush to move, you should be able to reunite with Yang Shi. Zhang Wuchen said. Ah, that's a relief. I'm in no hurry to leave, so I guess I'll impose on the Zhang clan while waiting for my teacher to come out of his seclusion then. Zhang Xian nodded as he secretly heaved a sigh of relief on the inside. It seemed like he still had a few more days to spare. However, to be safe, he should still hasten his plan. As soon as he lured the young prodigy of the Zhang clan out and pummeled him, he should leave straight away. Otherwise, it could pose to be a huge trouble if he were to bump heads with Yang Shi. May I know where my teacher is in seclusion at the moment? I'll just head over to pay my respects first without interrupting him, Zhang Xian asked. The least he could do was to first confirm the enemy's location. This way, he would know where he should flee to if he were to hear that the other party had come out of seclusion. I'm afraid that I don't really know. Only the first elder is aware of where Yang Shi had gone into seclusion at. Zhang Wuchen shook his head and replied, You don't know. Zhang Xian shook his head in feigned disappointment. While the two of them were still speaking, the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast and the Inferno Qilin were finally done with their breakthroughs. Incredible energy pulsated from their bodies, and it felt as if it would burst out of their bodies at any moment. The surrounding crowd couldn't help but eye the two Saint Nine Dan beasts gathered around Zhang Xian warily, apprehensive of the strength they wielded. Even Jian Qinsheng was a little agitated too. One must know that even the deputy sanctum head of the Sanctum of Sages was only at Saint Nine Dan primary stage. But Zhang Xian, despite being a student, had already tamed a Saint Nine Dan primary stage and a Saint Nine Dan pinnacle beast. What this meant was that there was effectively no one else who could stand against him in the Sanctum of Sages anymore. With such strength at his disposal, he was more than qualified to become an elder of the Sanctum of Sages. At the same time, conflicted looks appeared on the faces of the Zhang clan's offspring. They had come here to teach Zhang Xian a lesson, but after witnessing the formidable capabilities he wielded in painting and beast taming, they found their resolve wavering. Zhang Ziqing and Zhang Jiang could already be considered as the two most talented individuals amongst them, but nevertheless, they didn't even come close to being a match to Zhang Xian. If they were to challenge the young man at this point, they would only be embarrassing themselves and sullying the reputation of the Zhang clan further. As a result, this led to an awkward standstill. Awkward for everyone except for Zhang Xian. He was simply happy to have his moment of peace. After all, fending off all those pesky challengers was exhausting on his part too. There was only one opponent he was interested in here, and that was the little prodigy. The rest were simply too weak to even catch his interest. Zhang Shi, the guest area is already not suited for your accommodation anymore. I happen to have another residence prepared. Allow me to bring you over. Seeing that the geniuses of the Zhang clan had thoroughly lost their fighting will, Zhang Wuchen couldn't help but sigh deeply on the inside. Another residence? Zhang Xian pondered for a brief moment before nodding. I'll be troubling third elder then. Indeed. With the current state of the guest accommodations, there was no way he could stay here anymore. It's no trouble at all. Follow me. The third elder nodded. After instructing Elder Wuzhen to fix up the guest accommodations as soon as possible, he swiftly headed into the distance. Before leaving, Zhang Xian didn't forget to impart the method to stopping the sculptures to the two 9-star spirit awakeners, and before their shocked gazes, he departed into the distance. Not too long later, he arrived at the residential area of the Zhang clan members. Sword Saint Jian Qinsheng, you can use this room for the moment. After I settle in the other guests, we'll be holding the tournament for the younger generation. Following that, we'll be hosting a socializing session so that everyone can exchange cultivation insights and catch up with one another. After landing in a residence, the third elder explained the upcoming events for the day with a smile. All right, thank you. Jian Qinxing nodded. He had been to the Zhang clan for 3 times now, but this was the first time he had entered the residential area of the Zhang clan's core members. In a sense, he was benefiting from Zhang Xian's halo. The spiritual energy here wasn't as rich as that in the guest area, but there was a unique aura in the air, which seemed to energize one's body and mind, enhancing one's rate of cultivation. Zhang Shi, will you accompany me to take a walk around? After settling Jian Qinxing down, Zhang Wuchen turned to Zhang Xian and asked. I'll be pleased to, Zhang Xian replied with a nod. It just happened that he wanted to gain a deeper understanding of the Zhang clan in the off case that he ever needed to snatch his bride away from them. Since Zhang Wuchen was inviting him for a walk, there was no reason for him to turn him down. Even if there was danger, he had the Inferno Qilin and the Netherworld Azure Dragon Beast to guard him. Besides, he was a guest, and the Zhang clan seemed to value their reputation too much to make a move on their guests. This way, please. Zhang Wuchen gestured with a smile before leading the way forward. This time they didn't fly in the air but walked instead. After everything that had happened, the sun had already set. A crescent moon was accompanied by a sky of twinkling stars in the night sky, showering the world with a dim, cold light. Somehow, everything appeared particularly cold and forlorn on this very night. The 2 men walked along the pavement, one at the front and one at the back. Silence drifted between the 2 men before Zhang Wuchen suddenly asked with a casual tone. Zhang Shi, where did you come from? Do you have any siblings? I am an orphan. I don't even know who my parents are, let alone my siblings. Zhang Xian replied calmly. Even the previous him had no idea whom his parents are. So of course, he would have even less of an idea over here. An orphan, huh? Zhang Wuchen muttered beneath his breath, before realizing that he had allowed his thoughts to wander. So, he quickly pulled his attention back and carried on asking. Since you are an orphan, why is your surname Zhang? Who gave you your name? Zhang Xian pondered contemplatively before shaking his head. It has been too long. I don't remember anymore. In the first place, the memory he had inherited from the previous him wasn't complete. So how could he be aware of such complications? Based on the memories of the previous him, it seemed like he had been hung on a noose looped over a tree when he was very young and nearly lost his life, and the man who had saved him bestowed him with the character, Xian. As for why his surname was Zhang, well, beats him too. What was important to him was that his Zhang was not the same Zhang as the Zhang of the Zhang clan. You can't remember anymore? Your parents must have departed while you were very young, Zhang Wuchen remarked. Then, he abruptly chuckled softly before asking. Then Zhang Shi, what do you think of our Zhang clan? Do you have any interest in joining our ranks? Thank you for your goodwill, but I'll have to turn down that offer. Zhang Xian replied firmly. After forcing Luo Ruoxin to marry a man who had never taken responsibility for her and despicably scheming to kill him, they still had the cheek to ask him to join them? Dream on. I see. Not expecting the young man to reject his offer so affirmatively, Zhang Wuchen was left in a slightly awkward position. Silence drifted between the both of them for quite some time before Zhang Wuchen caught something ahead of him, and he heaved a sigh of relief. We're here. Here? Where? Taken aback, Zhang Xian raised his head and saw 2 massive characters appearing before his eyes. Blood reservoir. Xian has the meaning of hanging in Chinese. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.